temperature readings of 88, 87, 90 degrees, 91 degrees at the end of the school day yesterday, putting the heat indices into the high 90s.
Hey, Easton Browdy, I am Marjorie Yeakin. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. A programming note, Michelle Wu, the Mayor of Boston, will join us at the library on Tuesday for another edition of Ask the Mayor. That's 11 to 12, and Governor Maura Healey will be with us September 26th, also here at the Boston Public Library.
Hey there, Marjorie. I have another programming note, which I would say is the most important one. Yesterday, we had one of the most thrilling segments I think we've ever done when Lavender Darkangelo, who on September 26th, hopefully, is going to be the winner of America's Got Talent season, whatever this is, joined us in the studio with her two fathers, Will and Jamie. She sang, she and one of her fathers sang. It's now posted. If you go to youtube.com/GBH News and click on videos, I rarely say something like this. You will not be disappointed. If you missed it yesterday or if you heard it, but obviously didn't see it, an opportunity to see these three wonderful people together. Incredible family, incredible singer, and all that sort of thing. Check it out. Again, youtube.com/GBH News and click on videos. Earlier this week, the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, certified a bunch of citizen-initiated petitions to go on the ballot in 2024. Everything from rent control to psychedelics to MCAS no longer being a graduation requirement. There's one more step. If the sponsors of these petitions gather several thousand more signatures, I'm not sure what the precise number is, but it's not a lot of signatures, you will get to vote to make these things law or not law, part of the Constitution or not part of the Constitution. Today we're going to focus on one of them, rent control. And the reason we're doing that, the other day we were talking about the unaffordability of rents, so we figured we'd talk to you about whether or not this is something you'd support that you think will help in that effort to bring them, or at least keep them at reasonable rates. The number is 877-301-8970. The ballot measure is sponsored by State Rep Mike Connolly. It would not implement rent control anywhere. It would allow local elected leaders in cities and towns to enact rent control if they choose. It's called local option, and that's exactly what it means. An individual locality could decide to do rent control. The only rules of the road would be it would exempt, as Mayor Wu's proposal does, 2 and 3 family houses, and it would not apply for the first 15 years of new construction. So we want to know if you're for it or if you're against it and what the reasons are. If you're a renter, do you think it's going to help? The real estate industry says they're going to spend $30 million to defeat this. And the irony, at least to me, Marjorie, is, again, they're going to campaign against rent control when it seems to me this ballot question is less about rent control and more about democracy, about whether or not your individual community should be able to decide to have a law that at least the elected leaders believe will help the people in that community period, by the way. And the reason this is on the ballot is because the legislature, you'll tell the story in a second, is so populated with landlords that it has no chance of allowing Mayor Wu and people like her across the state to make their own democratic decisions, you know?
Yeah, well, as Emma Platloff and Matt Stout wrote in a piece of the Globe, one state senator owns at least $42 million worth of properties, including a condo in Boston's Back Bay and dozens of apartments in the Merrimack Valley. Lawmakers from Quincy and West Springfield each own 14 rental units apiece, and a Methuen Democrat has so much real estate, at least 25 properties. Records show that when the Globe asked for a tally, he struggled. Well, I don't keep count, said Representative Francisco E. Polino. There's a clear financial conflict
of
interest here. Yeah, absolutely. These people should have to recuse themselves. I don't know how many units you can own before you need to recuse yourself, but clearly if you own $42 million worth of property, I don't think you should be able to vote on this. But the point is, as you say, it's about cities and towns controlling their own destinies. I mean, as you've pointed out a million times, Mr. Rent Control over there, that Boston, Cambridge, and Brookline, the three towns that had rent control back in 1994, the citizens there voted to keep it, and they liked it. And as somebody who's lived in Brookline for a long time...
Wait, finish that sentence. And the other 348 cities and towns
get rid of it.
That didn't even have it said get rid of it. So statewide, they dumped it.
Interest can scare the heck out of people and say it's going to be a disaster. But, I was complaining yesterday about going around with my youngest kid, seeing different apartments, Alston Brighton has always been like the student ghetto, dumps. I mean, parents that come in to go to Boston College or BU, wherever the kids are going, they're paying astronomical amounts of money to live in dumps.
Wait a second, I thought since we don't have rent control, all these landlords were using all the money from the additional rent to make sure the apartments are in great shape.
A bunch of baloney. I mean, the apartments I've seen now for rent for lots of money, like $3,000, $3,500. I mean, the wood is crumbling, the porches are dirty. That's a big baloney excuse, if you ask me.
Baloney, and that's tough talk there, Marjorie.
It's tough talk, but particularly in Alston Brighton, where, I mean, you're paying $80,000 to go to Boston College, and you see how much you have to pay for an apartment, and it's a dump in Alston Brighton to be near Boston College. It's absolutely awful.
877-301-8970. So assuming this thing makes it to the ballot, and I think it's quite likely it will, even though there's some disagreement amongst the pro-rent control forces, where are you on this issue? If you want to speak to the merits of rent control or lack of merit in your position, in your estimation, that's fine. But if you do, regardless of your position, I know this sounds really naive, but how can a fair-minded person vote against something that does nothing more than give local elected leaders the chance to pass or not pass rules that will affect their constituents? Period. It's absurd. 877-301-8097. Let's start with Jim in a car. Hey, Jim.
Hello there.
Hello there.
I am for letting town cities make their own mind up.
Yeah.
Quickly, I am somebody who lived in Alston Brighton during college under rent control. It took 2 years to get in. $127.50 in 1985. So it helped me. I think a lot of homeowners, 2-3 unit places, are tired of the maintenance, upkeep. They want to cash in and make them all condos like you've done in my hometown of Gloucester.
Well, let me just tell you, there's nothing in this law that would stop that, because 2 and 3 family units are exempt, because the notion is that small landlords, at least that's the argument of the proponents, small landlords shouldn't be subject to these kinds of restrictions. And by the way, even though you're in favor of this thing, Jim, thanks for the call, a lot of people who oppose it worry that the way owners are going to get out of it is through condo conversions. And then you know what you can do? Then maybe if you decide to implement this local option thing, should it become law on the ballot, you have provisions that address questions about condo conversion. The only rules of the road that I'm aware of in this ballot question, again, any new development is exempt for 15 years. 2 and 3 family houses have to be exempt.
Owner occupied.
I'm sorry. And then in addition to that, you can decide what you want democratically, small d, in your community. 877-301-8097. 8970.
Well, condos have really hurt, obviously, the rental market in Boston here. I'll never forget just doing stories just a couple of blocks from here on Garrison Street, there were the apartment building with like 40 apartments in it. People who lived there for 40 and 50 years. One of them, I remember talking to this woman, was like 85 years old, thrown out because of condo conversion back in the mid to late 80s. It really did hurt. And all those rooming houses we used to have all over the place. We have a huge homelessness problem in Boston. We used to have places where people could live really cheaply. That's all gone now.
I moved to Cambridge a year before rent control was repealed. My neighborhood in Cambridge was dramatically different.
Mine
when
too.
I moved there in
Mine
1993 and in the beginning of 1995, a few months later, when rent limitations disappeared.
Well, the anecdote I always use is Beacon Street. Most people know Beacon Street, that goes through Boston and goes into Brookline, then goes back into Boston. That whole section, well, not the whole section, but a large segment of that section of Beacon Street that was in Brookline was all rent control. And as soon as they get rid of rent control in '94, condo conversion, and prices went absolutely through the roof.
And again, I'll say it, I'm probably going to say it about 15 times in the next 15 minutes, so my apologies in advance. Even if you don't like the concept, it seems to me if you're voting no, you're voting against democracy. You're basically saying the people you elected to run your city or town should not have the freedom to make decisions on certain issues because the legislature is a bunch of fat cats, essentially, who own property, who are going to vote in their self-interest and deny local autonomy for elected officials and their constituents. This just drives me nuts.
Let's go to Rodrigo in Cambridge. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Rodrigo, how are you?
Of course, yeah, thanks for taking my call. I'm doing well.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, first thing, I'm going to vote yes because of what you just said. Like, I agree that you should give communities their autonomy. But if you look at any study on rent control, which you can look up on Brookings or The Economist or other things, all the studies say that rent control in the long term doesn't actually affect rental prices. It's more like a Band-Aid measure that affects short-term prices. And in my opinion, what we really need to do is increase housing stock. I know at least in Cambridge, most of the housing units today are illegal under current zoning laws. So the density we currently have is a relic of the past that you can't actually implement today. So I think what we really need to do is update our local zoning laws to increase the housing stock and increase the housing capacity within Boston, because in a normal market economy like the one we have, that's what will ultimately bring prices down in the long term.
Rodrigo, you just gave me an idea. By the way, I don't know if you know, not only do I live in Cambridge, but I was, unfortunately for the people of Cambridge, I was a city councilor for 2 years at the turn of the century, turn of this most recent century, not the century before. When you mentioned the short-term thing, and I think even though I'm a big proponent of rent control, depending on the details, I think your analysis is right. Why not put a sunset on a provision, if Cambridge were to implement it, saying we'll do this for 15 years and it will expire if additional X number of affordable, defining what affordable housing units are created. And if they're not created, then the need for rent control will continue, and it continues. In some ways, that addresses your short and long-term concerns, does it not?
To some extent, yes, but I do think another issue with rent control is that while it does lower prices, it doesn't guarantee who those lower prices go to.
That is totally right. That is totally right.
I have many friends who are MIT alums, make six figures, but they're living in New York in rent-controlled apartments, which just doesn't seem.
Rodrigo, I had a discussion with Mayor Wu a few months ago.
Testing.
I and Marjorie support means testing, and Mayor Wu does not. In fact, when she's here Tuesday, let's bring that up again. Rodrigo, that was a great call. Thanks.
That was one of the biggest arguments back in 1994 that our landlords would prefer to rent to people that are, doing quite well. They don't have to worry about someone getting behind in the rent. And they were city councilor in your town in Cambridge. There was a Superior Court judge of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
And the former president of GBH, David Ives.
Yeah, he probably could have swung a little bit more than living in a rent control.
By the way, he was the mayor of Cambridge at the time, but which is perfect. It was Ken Reeves. It was perfectly legal. He wasn't violating any laws. But when you used to drive into Cambridge on River Street, when I first moved there was a house about 50 feet in on River Street, right when you cross the Charles into Cambridge, that had handwritten sign for years leading up to the ballot question in 1994, listing every upper middle class or wealthy person who lived in rent control. And by the way, I think that was a fairly compelling argument. Not, by the way, to eliminate rent control and screw everybody, but to at least do some means testing. Let's go to John. I'm sorry, you want to say something?
Well, here's a couple of texts. Benjamin in Brighton says, Jim must be rubbing off on me. My blood is boiling about the legislature quashing this after the vote, and the election is still a million months away.
Can I explain something, by the way, very clearly? I should have said this. I used to do ballot questions for a living. The beauty of ballot campaigns, other than constitutional changes, law changes, doesn't matter what the legislature thinks. If you collect signatures, as these people did, and it is found to be in compliance with the Constitution, which Andrea Campbell did for maybe 3 dozen of these almost, then it goes to the ballot whether the legislature hates it or not. It's basically a way for people to say, if we're unhappy with what the legislature is doing or not doing, we can take matters in our own hands, which I actually love.
2 more quick texts here. I try not to demonize others, but in a time when no one can afford to live on their own almost anywhere anymore, seeing folks raking in massive amounts of money in multiple buildings and not putting work into them is absolutely criminal. I've rented from a small handful of these people. Something needs to be done. And here's Amber from Worcester. This is a good question for you, Attorney Browdy.
Thank you very much.
Is there going to be something in there about not requiring first month, last month, plus security deposit to sign a lease? That alone is an insane amount of money to cough up and a huge hurdle. Imagine that. See if you get a bargain in Boston, which is like $2,000 a month, right? But if you're going to get first, last, security deposit, that's $6,000.
And maybe a fee.
Yeah, a fee.
Which is $8,000.
So how many people have $6,000 sitting around in their bank account when they're ready to sign a lease?
Well, actually, that shows you don't understand the issue. All the landlords who own these properties do. So it's not really. No, in all seriousness, I don't know if it's not part of the statewide ballot question. Obviously, locally, am I right about this? Can individual cities and towns pass their own laws about that kind of issue, or is it a statewide issue?
I don't know what the answer is to that, but that seems to be pretty outrageous too. And the other thing is, I just happened to be in an apartment the other night. I'm not going to say where it was. $3,000 on the first floor.
By the way, the beauty of you've only mentioned this 4 times in 2 days. I love that, but I really do. When you get stuck on something, it is great, especially since I'm with you.
$3,000 on the first floor, $3,000 on the second floor, $3,000 on the third. That's $9,000 a month, right, in rents, and they can't paint the stairs. They can't fix the broken banister.
So,
they can't clean up the backyard with $9,000 a month coming in.
You're on fire. Can we continue with that for a second?
Sure.
I know you hate quizzes. I'm going to ask you a quiz, okay? Here's a quiz. Lisa Kaczynski from Politico is responsible for this.
That's right.
How many states are there, Marjorie?
There are 50 states, Jim.
How many legislatures are there?
I assume there are 50.
There are 50.
It's getting a little harder.
It is going to get harder. Of the 50 legislatures, there are 50 states, correct?
Yep.
Of the 50 state legislatures,
that's right.
Which in 2022, that was last year, by the way, which was found to be by some think tank the single least effective legislature in America.
That would be ours.
Ding, 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 ding. That is exactly
right
correct.
In the
that is the same
of
legislature that probably will not even vote on this local option thing because they're controlled by people who own property. It's outrageous.
Well, listen to this. Senator Barry R. Feingold, and again, we want to give credit to Emma Platoff and Matt Stout of the Globe. Senator Barry R. Feingold, an Andover Democrat and real estate attorney, owns more than 50 properties, mostly through a series of limited liability companies, et cetera, collectively assessed at more than $42 million.
$42 million.
30 apartments in Haverhill, 16 commercial and real estate properties in Andover, 5 apartment buildings in Lowell, and a $1 million condo in the Back Bay. He could be voting on this, Jim.
Yeah, he will.
And guess what?
If they vote on it.
Guess what he said.
Well, I can't vote on the ballot. I mean, by the way, let me be clear. I want to be clear about
this is not the ballot question. This is if it's before the legislature.
The Wu proposal.
Right. What? Well,
the Wu proposal is before the legislature.
That's right. It's before the legislature. If he were asked to vote on this, which he shouldn't be asked to vote because he should be recuse himself. But guess what he had to say when the Globe called him and asked him what he thought about this whole thing?
What did he say?
Well, he declined to talk to them. He said he couldn't.
Well, once again, you're being unfair. I did a little research on that before I wrote my excellent piece for the Globe on rent control. What was the date of that, Jim? If I want to check that out.
Oh,
well, actually, it was July 8th of 2023.
July 8th,
Jim Browdy, that'd be me.
Yep.
The reason he couldn't comment to the Globe about this is because he was on the 5-month hiatus that the legislature goes on every 2 years so they can think about the issues that concern them. John at work, you've been very patient. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling in. What's up?
Hi, guys. I'm just one of those fat cats out there that's going to vote in my own self-interest.
Okay.
And
you're an honest man, John.
I have one condo that I rent out. It's 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I've owned it for 7 years, and I still don't cover the mortgage.
Wow.
And so I was curious how this proposal would, would each individual town set the rules on,
Yes.
if I could.
Well, yes. Yeah, and let me just say, again, the only two things that would be prescribed, mandated in the state ballot question is the exemption of new development for 15 years and 2- and 3-family houses. But what I would say to you, and I understand your point of view, I totally do, and I might even feel the same way you do under the circumstances, the answer is in your own city and town, say, the other exemption you have is should people in their own if they own an individual property. I don't know whether that's meritorious or not. It sounds like it is in your case. But yes, they could make that decision locally if this were to be implemented statewide.
Well,
and if you only get a 3% bump a year or 1.5% of what we're already charging for rent, and my HOA fees keep going up, and I keep getting assessments to fix decks and stuff like that. It'd be hard to keep up with.
But John, for whatever it's worth, which is no guarantee unless you live in Boston, we should have mentioned this earlier. The level of increase limit that Mayor Wu has set in her proposal, there's not one in the statewide thing, there is in her thing for Boston, exceeds the average rent increase that landlords have unilaterally imposed for years in Boston.
Right?
It's 10% based upon, that was based upon the relatively high inflation rate. So the answer is your community could decide to set a level where rent control, in your instance, even if it applied to your one unit, had no negative effect on you because it was above the level which you thought you needed to sustain a decent profit. John, that was an excellent call. Thank you for calling.
What they can't be is really ridiculous in terms of the money that you pay for rent, too, because, that was the other problem back in 1994. I owned a condo. We just bought our first condo for $120,000. Imagine that, $120,000, and then had to go away for a year because my former husband got a fellowship, and they said we could only rent the place for $600, which was half of the mortgage under rent control. They hadn't upped the amount of money to a reasonable amount of money in the town of Brooklyn.
You think Wu, a lot of people who are pro-rent control think Wu's proposal is too fair, is too moderate in terms of the rent ceiling here. It is really a high level of virtually no properties based on the history of the last 5 years are even going to hit the cap that she would impose.
But I guess my point is it can't be ridiculous.
Of course
about
it can't be.
And I think in prior years when you were championing this the last time around, Jim, it was ridiculous what they were limiting the rents to.
By the way, a lot of you are writing and saying, can we discuss this right up to Election Day next year? And the answer is we can't, because I don't think I mentioned this. The legislators are on a 5-month vacation next year. Did I mention that? So unfortunately,
what do they call us?
The least effective
legislature in the United States of America, right here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Got to take a break.
Okay, let's get a quick break, and we're going to be back talking about this in just a second. We're talking about a return of rent control in Massachusetts. Stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. The mayor will join us next Tuesday at the library. She'll be here for an hour, 11 to 12 on Tuesday, to answer your questions and ours. Attorney General Andrea Campbell approved a bunch of questions initiated by voters for the ballot in November 2024. One of them was to have a local option rent control law in the state. Again, it doesn't impose rent control anywhere. It says that local elected bodies, town councils, town meetings, a mayor, whoever runs an individual one of the 351 cities and towns, has the option to impose some form of rent control. The reason they went to the ballot is because the landlord-dominated legislature, which I may have mentioned is on vacation 5 months every 2 years, probably is never going to vote on this. And if they do, they're going to vote no, because it's against their self-interest, even though it's in the interest of scores of thousands of people. In fact, a majority of people in recent polling in Massachusetts, both in the city, 2/3 roughly support it, and close to 70% statewide. 877-301-8970. We want to know if you support this concept, assuming it makes it to the ballot.
Here's some text. My kids rented in Amherst during school. The housing stock there is atrocious, run down, poorly weathered, marginally safe. 4 persons, $3,500 a month. I've met, and here's the second one from Beverly, Ronnie in Beverly, from Danvers, because he was priced out of Salem.
Oh.
I've moved 4 times in 5 years. My building in Salem was sold when our new landlord raised the rent from $1,500 to $2,500. That was when my partner was in the hospital. My job was going out of business. I had to pull all our things out of storage, crashed on a couch. The storage unit was, of course, burglared. I lost things like my late grandfather's cufflinks and about $10,000 worth of other property and heirlooms. Rent control now. And this is Edja, if I'm pronouncing Edja from Somerville. I like the proposed idea, but it doesn't go far enough. As a renter, I was displaced from a place in Somerville. There was a 3-family house. The new landlord raised the rent as soon as he took over, did no repairs, proceeded to redo the units below and above us, making our lives hell with construction after raising our rent and not fixing our place at all. He even shut the heat off on us at one point just to urge us to go away.
Can I make a suggestion? Because I'm being far too negative, I think, about the legislature. How about this? For those who are displaced because of exorbitant rent increases, how about for 5 months next year they live at the State House? No, in light of the fact that no one's going to be there for those 5 months, why not use the...
Well, a lot of people are texting about what the State House hasn't done. Apparently there's all these bills, but what do you call it, ranked choice voting?
Yeah.
That are pending all over the Commonwealth, and they're getting nowhere up at the State House.
Well, excuse me, even though I don't support it, the governor ran on a pledge to do a tax cut. Mm-hmm. The House leadership supports that. The Senate leadership supports that. Is there a tax cut? No, there's not. There is a provision in the budget that sets aside almost $600 million for a tax cut, but there's no detail, which means there's no tax cut, which all 3 leaders have committed to the people of Massachusetts.
But you know what a lot of that is, that we don't know the kind of power our legislators have, our state senator and state representative. People don't ride their backs enough.
Well, they don't have any power. The people who have power are the Speaker and the Senate President. I mean, these are like total autocracies.
But I think if you complained all the time to your legislator or your state, that you might get a little bit more action. You know, it's kind of like if you go to the central office of the Boston Public Schools and they know you're a parent coming in, you know what they do?
No.
They'll open their drawers and hide them. That's what they do.
Well, again, I don't know if I've mentioned this. During that 5 months, you have to put a tag on your state legislator to find them, because who the hell knows? Oliver and Newton, you've been very patient. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey there.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm just in the tunnel in the 93, so I don't know if this is going to cut out. But anyway, I'm a contractor based in, I work in Boston and Newton. Mm-hmm. I'm not for the rent control, because I just feel it's attacking the problem at the wrong end. Mm-hmm. Supply and demand is something that works across the board with everything. There's just no supply in Boston. I'm residential on the ground. I can tell you that it's a very difficult, permitting and stuff is a very difficult process right now. And I just feel that taking care of that would take care of the rent control, because it would make it competitive. I just feel that at the minute we're trying to, we're swapping availability for affordability. So, yeah, you can make the rent affordable, but now you're going to have 200 people fighting for one that came up because there's nothing else.
That's a very good point. You know, Oliver, I think you make a lot of sense. I think the rent control, I happen to support it as a concept, but for those who are less supportive of it, you, for example, are a pretty good example, this is almost a desperation move because so little is being done to expand supply and enforce affordability. Yeah.
You look at what goes up, Oliver, all over the city of Boston. It's luxury apartments for the most part, luxury
with
condos.
often absentee owners because the lights are off at night if you drive by.
They might have a couple affordable ones, but look at what we did in the Seaport. Look at what we've done all over. I mean, I tell you, Marty Walsh was very good for the building and trades people in Boston. There were cranes everywhere, but you looked at those apartments, Oliver, they weren't affordable. I mean, you look at that place. What was that place, Continuum, over there in Brighton, near Harvard Stadium, where they're renting 3-bedroom apartments for $6,000 a month?
Oliver, you had a final thought. Take it away. Did you? I'm sorry. I thought I heard you ready to speak again. We appreciate your call. Thank you, and we appreciate your point of view. Really appreciate your contributions. You want to wrap this up? Can I just be clear for people?
We're going to wrap it up, Jim.
You may hear about the legislature. Well, the legislature's already voted on the ballot question. It doesn't matter what their position is. This will be on the ballot in November of next year if the sponsors get whatever number of signatures they need, which is not a very high hurdle. So the likelihood is that you will be able to decide for yourself whether or not you want your individual community to have the democratic power to impose or not impose some kind of rent control thing where you live. That's the end of the story.
We are done.
And it really is, let me just say, it's more about democracy, in my opinion, than it is, or at least as much about democracy as it is about housing affordability.
It's also about trying to make sure that people that want to stay here can stay here when they get out of college. You want to have every kid that's 22 years old that just got a great education, is ready to do a great job, having to move to like Rhode Island. And you can't even afford that much of Rhode Island anymore.
Do they take 5 months off in the legislature?
I don't know what they do down there in Rhode Island, but I just know it's cheaper to live there, but not that much. Anyway, we're going to change topics right here. We're going to have a big treat coming up. We've had them with us before, and they're with us again today. Cliff Notes, songwriter extraordinaire, painter, and professor as well for another edition of Live Music Friday. Cliff Notes returns to Boston Public Radio. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. What was that about? Mayor Wu, Mayor Wu, we were talking about her. Mayor Wu will be here next Tuesday, 11 to 12, to answer your questions and ours. And the governor is with us the 26th. 26th.
That's right.
For an hour to do the same whatever thing. In any case, welcome to yet another Live Music Friday on Boston Public Radio. This one I understand. Here with us at the interview desk is a familiar face, Boston's own Cliff Notes is with us, and they have new music. Now, if you're unfamiliar, if you weren't listening a few months ago, Cliff Notes is a songwriter, a visual artist, an entrepreneur, 2018 Boston Music Awards New Artist of the Year. They're also an assistant professor in the songwriting department at Berkeley, in addition to teaching at Northeastern and Tufts. They've got shows all through the fall and winter over at Rockwood Music Hall in Fenway. The segment's over in a minute. First one is 2 weeks from today on September 22nd. Before that, an appearance at Fuzztival, F-U-Z-Z-Tival, I guess, at the Armory in Somerville, Saturday the 16th. I'm almost done. Then there's a new album out last month. It's called In Case You Forget. It's In Case You Forget. Oh, and there's an art display in Western Mass.
Yeah,
we're going
to show some of the art in just a second.
Cliff Notes, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Now you're supposed to applaud. Thank you.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Sometimes what?
Sometimes I like those intros can be so long. I'm like, why am I even here? It's just doing all
we
this
don't even need you.
That's
We're glad you're here.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point. We'll work on that before the next time you're here. But I know you've got these two events coming up in Somerville and at Fenway, little place, Rockwood, right? 120 people can fit in there.
Yep.
But I want to know, last time you were here, you had a bunch of stuff. You had the violin, you had the cello, you had a lot of music. Today, it's just you.
It's just me.
So what's the difference?
So today I'm on a mission.
Yeah?
I'm on a mission from my new record label to tell you about something that they told me that I should tell you about. And you've talked about it a little bit. So I'm excited to play some new music for you.
Yeah.
And although I'm alone today, I will not be alone specifically at the Rockwood show at Fenway down the street over there.
Yeah,
so,
tell us about that place. It sounds like a neat venue.
So Rockwood Music Hall is opening up brand new. I think they've been doing a couple shows to test out the venue over the last couple of months, but they're actually out in New York. I played there a few years ago, but they have their nice little venue there. I think I'm always a huge fan of small venues in Boston.
Me too.
Because we've lost a few over the pandemic, like Great Scott, and the fact that we have a new one coming right in the heart of the city, I always want to support that. So I'm going to be doing a show there on September 22nd, and then a couple more throughout the year.
We'll tell you how to get tickets in a couple of minutes. You know, when I was exhausted reading your resume last night, so I decided I had to take a break.
I was exhausted doing it.
And I actually figured maybe I'll listen to the last time you were on a few months ago. And one of the things I took away, and everything I've ever read about you from years ago, long before we knew you, is you are, the expression we used last time you were here is, a lifting all boats kind of person. Mm-hmm. And you teach young people just wanting to get in the industry about songwriting and related kinds of things. Is that mentality in them too? I know there's not a monolith, but is that mentality in them too, that this is a shared responsibility to each other, that sort of thing? We all benefit from everybody else benefiting? Or is their view, is they're entering this really competitive business and I really have to worry about number one?
Well, at least the ones that pass my class.
Okay. No, really.
They'll share that.
What's the deal?
Well, I love teaching at universities because I think that there's a wide eye look at the world, especially in the arts. And it's something that you can start to lose once you leave university. Coming from my own personal experience, you get a little bit jaded from the business. So to be refreshed from these young people that don't necessarily know everything about the business, but that honestly leaves them as better people for now. So I think that there's so much energy that they have and so much potential to do something great. So if I can be at any way a support mechanism for them, I want to be that.
You're too young for this, but you mentioned when you were in college, you went to Wheaton in Norton,
Yep.
right? Do you know the most famous story about Wheaton ever at a commencement?
I'll
tell
a
you
few
what
stories about
Here's
Wheaton.
a good one. You tell me if this one's better. Ann Curry, who was the host of the Today Show,
Mm-hmm.
was the commencement speaker, what, about 15, 20 years ago?
It wasn't that long, I don't think.
And during her speech, she is saying how exciting it is to be giving a commencement speech at a college that has graduated great people like the Reverend Billy Graham, the great writer Wes Craven, and she had blank faces in the audience, and it was only when she was done
I know what
that
happened.
she became aware of what?
She's probably talking about the Wheaton in
In
Chicago.
Illinois, exactly. How
college.
humiliating. Would you ever come out of your house again after something like that?
She definitely probably never went back to Wheaton.
That's probably
That was
too.
very-
We're talking
very-
to Cliff Notes, who's going to perform in a second.
But you've talked a lot about, though, the making art and music here. You know, you think of, especially with music, people going to New York, people going to L.A. But you talked about the music scene in Boston. Tell us why that's been good for you.
Well, I think, one, we know Boston as like this academic hub where there's so much happening. We have great schools like MIT, Berkeley, Tufts, so on and so on. I'm not just shouting out the ones I've taught at.
Yeah.
But when you have that kind of hub here, there is opportunity for growth and exploration that isn't happening many other places. When you can go across the street from right here and be with a Northeastern student or a Berkeley student or a Suffolk student all within a quarter mile, you can create some amazing things. So almost like a young Silicon Valley can happen here, especially in the arts, I think. There's so many artists who have come from these schools and are from here and are making moves with a new understanding of the world and the city that they're in. So I think that can put us ahead of the pack on a national level, on a global level, so on and so forth.
Yeah, but to use your words, an opportunity for growth and exploration. This has been far less of an opportunity for growth and exploration for people of color in the city. You're a local kid. You come from here. Is it inhibited your growth, your ability to explore other artists of color with whom you work and care about?
I think situation and context is key in this because relatively, yes, for me, I have had an inhibited growth, but at the same time, in comparison to the people that I've grown up with, I have had more opportunities than them. So recognizing that I am lucky to a certain extent, I feel a sort of responsibility to give back in some kind of way and tell people about how they can get the grants that I've gotten, how they can even apply for universities, and to just tell them that it's tangible, it's within reach if they really want to.
In a minute, we're going to talk about your art. I mean, your art is your music, but your art is also what most physical art.
Yeah, the tangible.
We're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes, but first, you're going to do a couple of things for us. What's
Wait,
the first?
I actually have a quick thing for you. I brought you a couple shirts.
Free stuff?
Oh.
We love free stuff.
T-shirts.
What is it?
So these are shirts I'm actually wearing. These are limited edition right now. So you guys are getting the last
edition.
of these. You can only get these in person if you see me live.
Oh, yeah?
But there are a few different versions on our website.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Wild.is.
What does that stand
shop.
for? What does this stand for here? Should I hold this up like this or no? Actually, I'm in the wrong.
Depending on
There
which way you're looking at it, it's either a cloud or a flower. I like to look them as flowers, and it depends on what your day is. Sometimes you're up in the clouds and your head is all over the place, or sometimes you're down and you're grounded on earth and you're smelling the flowers. So I think that that's something big, and you'll see that symbol throughout my artort and the stuff that I paint as well.
Thank you so much.
So I hope you enjoy those.
What do you get? I'm enjoying them already. We can add it to your resume. What are you performing first?
Jim is just jealous.
No reason to be jealous. You got so much shit.
There is an ounce of jealousy. You really are a Renaissance person. I mean, you're an incredible.
So today, thank you.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Today, I'm re-exploring this thing that I lost hope in a few years ago, and it's called love. And I've been writing these songs, and for some reason I couldn't remember any of this stuff until this project came out. And so I'm gonna perform a song called Coolidge, and then later I'm gonna perform a song called, actually I'm gonna start with a song called Dub, and I'm gonna perform a song called Coolidge, which is an ode to my favorite indie movie theater in Boston, Coolidge Corner Theater.
Oh, great.
So it's about indie films in general.
Well, you're going to come back in between. So
for sure.
Gently put your headset down, Cliff Notes. Dub is the first number we're going to hear in a couple of seconds. You want to give the dates where people can find Cliff Notes, Margaret?
Absolutely. Cliff Notes has shows all through the fall and winter over at the Rockwood Music Hall in the Fenway. That's the one we just talked about, that new one. The first one is 2 weeks away from today, September 22nd. Before that, there's an appearance at the Fuzztival, I love that name, at the Armory in Somerville. That's next Saturday, the 16th of September. And there's a new album out last month. It's called In Case You Forget. Okay.
Cliff Notes. Here they are.
All right. Where I'm from, a dub is a W. I just need a dub. Turn this hole into a hole. No, it's sink or swim. Sip and smile or lose control. When you call someone and go, all I can think about is she. Empty people never feel me. Still got blonde on repeat. I'm not talking about the ocean, talking about my cold grief. Set a speaker for the leap and I say you will see. Here I go again. Playing a pretender. Get the flowers that I sent you, cause I bent another fender, yeah. I wish I knew love like I wrote it, but it's just these L's that I'm holding. So I just need a dub. Turn this hole into a hole. No, it's sink or swim. Sip and smile or lose control. Oh no. Oh no. I just need a dub. Turn this hole into a hole. No, it's sink or swim. Sip and smile or lose control. Oh no. Oh no. Every day of every day, but my name's Cliff. Right ain't west, bet that ain't it. Burning sage at the wake of this retrograde. In the cold of the shade of a cloudy day. Marvin Gaye on the play or some old Sade. Disassociate, so I might escape. Avoid their face, I can't relate. Overcompensate, so I so sedate. The doja fill your soul up when you get a little older. Blowing smoke over them. Eating chips up off your shoulders. You start caring about critique because it never gave you closure. Well, maybe I should find love. Or maybe just a dud. Turn this hole into a hole. No, it's sink or swim. Sip and smile or lose control. Oh no. Oh no. I just need a dud. Turn this hole into a hole. No, it's sink or swim. Sip and smile or lose control. Oh no. Oh no. I really need a dub. Really need a dub. Thank you.
Cliff Notes.
That was Cliff Notes. It says Saturday, September 22nd at the Rockwood Music Hall in Fenway, and the festival at the Armory in Somerville next Saturday, the 16th.
We should say before we go ahead, Cliff Notes is with a Z, but if I remember from your last appearance, all your social media stuff is a double Z. Is that correct?
Two Z's.
There's
Fair
two
enough.
of me. Okay.
So you're all over. Before we get to the art stuff, you're all over the place with the music too. It's
Yep.
yeah. So what's that about? I mean, you talked about Joni Mitchell before as one of your big influences, and you're at Club Passim.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
And you're doing rap and stuff too.
Yeah, so I grew up in hip hop. That's kind of like the first thing that came to my life. Also, happy birthday to hip hop, 50 years of hip hop.
That's right.
Forever.
Can you believe it's been 50 years?
50 years. Wow. Still so young, too.
Yeah, that's right.
But I grew up with that, but I also had a lot of siblings who listened to a lot of different things. And what I was the second youngest and the most mischievous. So I would go into their CD collections and steal their stuff and just like have my mind blown by everything that I was listening to. So although hip hop was the first, everything else that came in was just as valuable to me moving up. So I actually did a show at Club Passim, and we'll be doing another one hopefully, where I kind of walk through those influences and talk about how both my siblings were a big part of that influence, and Boston radio, like listening to David Allen Boucher.
Oh God!
One of my
Can I tell you something? We went to work at our commercial station, and we finally, David Allen Boucher, who's since retired.
Voice.
No, wait a second.
A most amazing voice.
But no one ever saw his face.
No.
When
Even
we
his Facebook
finally met him,
profiles.
and we got to, I was like speechless.
In the elevator.
It was unbelievable.
Did he have his hat on?
He did have his hat on, but it wasn't covering his face.
Yeah, and he wasn't really what I expected him to look like, I must admit.
That's kind of the allure. You got to stay hidden for like the rest of your life.
By the way, he looked great. It's just not,
great.
But it just not.
But it was like, you heard the voice.
What's it called? Bedtime magic, right?
And it was bedtime magic.
I can't believe you're mentioning Boucher. That is great.
But that listening to that, like I would come off of basketball practice. My dad would come pick me up. We'd listen to Bedtime Magic on the way home, and that's how I got introduced to so much of that rock and roll, soft rock, folk, like everything that I know I owe to Dave and Ballot.
Oh my gosh! Have you told him that?
Yeah, I've told him. I actually
good.
tried to get him on an album with me, but he was still with 106.7, and he was under contract, so he couldn't. So I might reprise.
I have a cell phone. I can
give it to you. If he's watching, David, I would love to do a project.
Hi, David.
Hey, we only have a couple of seconds before you're going to perform your second number.
Oh, you're going to show some artwork.
We're going to show some art. Just start putting some things up if we can, our colleagues. Tell us about this tiny art for all gallery in Northampton deal.
So it's at the start of the bike path in Northampton. They've got a few different tiny art galleries that are littered across the bike path in Northampton, so about 3 miles. And I partnered up with them to do a small exhibition of work. And some of the artwork that you're seeing up now are a lot of the things that inspired that. The last time you've seen some of these artworks were at the Fort Point Artist Community down on the seaport. Looking for a new place to hang up some artwork, so if any galleries are watching, please let me know. But for now, we're doing the Tiny Art Gallery for All, and you can go out there. That's a interactive art piece as well, so if you're in Northampton, go ahead and check that out.
You know, you got to go perform in 30 seconds, but in those 30 seconds, how interconnected is all your different kinds of, I mean, how dependent is what you just did on a piece that you created on canvas or paper? You know what I mean? How does it all fit?
I would say that there are a lot of things happening, Jim, right in front of your eyes. This is so much more connected than I am allowed to say, but there are some secrets. If you dig deeper and you check out what's happening, you'll find out just how connected it all is.
Wow.
Okay.
Whoa.
That's heavy. That's heavy.
So you're going to do Coolidge now, right?
Yep, Coolidge.
It's fabulous to see you. I was sort of saying in advance.
Great to
We're
see
really
you
glad
both.
to have you
Thanks
back.
for having me back.
Both,
And here they are doing Coolidge about one of our favorite theaters on the planet
Theater,
too, by the way.
up in Brookline. It's only a few miles from
Cliff
here. They
Notes.
have one big theater, one small theater, one little teeny tiny theater you can watch with like 50 people. It's a great place. Plus,
It's a
they have real
fabulous place.
butter popcorn and beer and wine.
Real butter. Would you not agree that real butter is the key to popcorn? Is it not? Yes or no?
Absolutely.
Well, technically, I'm a vegan.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Forget
I brought
that, Jim.
up. I'm in
Forget that.
agony.
Okay.
Here's Cliff Notes doing Coolidge.
So this song is essentially a rom-com. You'll get it. How can I withstand triumph like all of my plans dying? I've been watering seeds, but forgot to prune the leaves. But you know that summer coming, made it somewhere off for nothing. Guess it's all relative as references in my curricula. No man in island, but I guess I'm a peninsula. And you got that water that washes the wilted. No book fertilizer, it's your soul that had wilted. At least that's my perspective, unfiltered. But reminiscently delusional tends to make the different beautiful. And you got the irrefutable, cutest views, which I could score a musical and watch you walk these broken streets to whatever narrator that you really find suitable. Dang, if love is just consumable, let's make this movie something beautiful. Something me and you should know. Make it top 5 amongst the critics, indisputable. Rain starts with my brain, yeah. Slow shutter species. A couple scratches on my screen, yeah. I know this is my ending. Okay, so we got camera 1 over here, camera 2, and then we do op-steer transition. Guess we in a different world or another perspective. I could write a script on our shift, but it would only be a movie. But the truth is a quick flip from a skeptic with tight tunes that'll move me. Fourth wall breaking intro, maybe somewhere in the middle. Maybe add a fiddle, maybe rethink that lighting a little. Sometimes I think I'm a director, but I know I'm just an actor. But if I write a million love flicks, maybe I could get some practice. And in this rom-com, we could laugh at all the things that we were bad at. No, what could be better though? Never dreamed till the credits roll. And in this rom-com, we could laugh at all the things that we were bad at. Hey, I know what could be better though. Live a dream to the credits roll. I need brainstorms with my brain, yeah. So shutter species. A couple scratches on my screen, yeah. I know this is my indie fit. Finn, thank you.
We have been speaking with and listening to Boston's own Cliff Notes. For more information on everything they're up to, go to wild.is. That's wild with two I's, WIILD.is. Or just Google Cliff Notes, and Notes is with a Z. After the noon news, is it two Z's or one Z?
Two Z's on social media, name is with one Z.
Okay, one Z. Okay, just make sure I got that right.
You'll find it, just Google
After the noon news, a new Rolling Stone expose pulls back the curtain on a toxic workplace at Jimmy Fallon's Tonight Show. You mean he's not a nice guy? Oh no, Callie Crossley will fill us in on that and a whole lot more right after the noon news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. Mayor Michelle Wu will be with us here at the library next Tuesday for another edition of Ask the Mayor. She'll be here from 11 to 2, and the Governor of the Commonwealth will be here at the library with us on September 26th.
I know I'm a bit of a broken record.
You are, but that's okay.
But I want to promote
case.
something again. Margie and I had the thrill yesterday of meeting and talking to and listening to Lavender Darkangelo, who is a blind person who has autism, who is a finalist in America's Got Talent, September 26th. She may win the $1 million prize, one of the 2 finalists. She and her 2 dads came in for a half hour in the studio yesterday. And beyond, by the way, if she had never sung, Marjorie, I don't know how you feel, and if she and her father never sung, what a fabulous, fabulous family this is. Well, she sang. And then as we're drawing to a close, I was sitting there thinking, well, the father, one of the dads, Will, is a voice coach and was her voice coach. And I said, do you ever sing together? Well, it turns out they had not sung together in 4 years, but they whispered into each other's ears for a second and chose to grace us with a little bit of something they had done 4 years ago. Here's just a taste of what we got to hear yesterday from Will and Lavender Darkangelo.
Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true.
I'll tell you, I listened to this thing again last night. It was spectacular. And finally, whether you listened or not, you can actually watch it. Our colleague Howard Powell videoed it yesterday. You don't have to go to YouTube. You can go to gbhnews.org, the homepage, and right there on the left is Lavender and her dads, and they're 30 minutes with us.
Right.
It is really worth your time. It is a beautiful threesome, and we're going to tell you next week how to vote on the finale, assuming you want Lavender to win this contest as we do. Joining us now on Zoom is GBH's Callie Crossley. I don't know, she's at some romance conference or something.
We're going to hear all about
in Connecticut. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6. Also the host of Basic Black, which airs Friday at 7:30. You can also hear her Callie commentaries, because she is Callie Crossley, on Mondays from GBH on GBH's Morning Edition. Hello there, Callie, wherever you are. Hi, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
I'm in the wilds of New Haven, Jim and Marjorie.
Yes, but tell
What are
us,
you doing?
She's at
Why don't you ask her where she is?
Romance Fiction Conference. And I am so excited about it, I can't tell you. Right now I'm in the Horvu Center for Teaching and Learning. They've generously given me this room so that I can speak to you all, so I can register later on for the conference. I'm just so excited. It's all about romance. Has an academic basis because we're at Yale University.
Absolutely.
And then there'll be authors, many authors, and rabid fans like myself, and I assume some industry people. I'm chiefly here to support my friend Karen Grigsby Bates, who is moderating the keynote with Roxane Gay. I know you know her name.
Yes, absolutely.
The OG of Black romance fiction, Beverly Jenkins.
Okay, so I was going to ask you, because I think a lot of people you're a bookworm, let's face it, Callie. You know everything about books. So could you give a couple of, you mentioned Roxane Gay, everybody's heard of her, she's very famous. You mentioned your friend. What would you recommend for somebody dipping their toe into romance fiction?
Well, I love Beverly Jenkins' work. It's historical fiction, so that her characters are all based off of history that happened to Black folks that is usually in unusual circumstances, or unusual to most people be thinking about, what Black folks would be doing out west, or, in very interesting circumstances. Her books are fabulous, and she has rabid following. Of course, a lot of people are familiar with Jasmine Guillory, who is a graduate of Wellesley College. And she was a former lawyer based in San Francisco, and now she's turned to romance writing, and she's one of the most popular I would say, contemporary in the new group of romance writers. Nora Roberts, come on.
Oh, yeah, Nora Roberts. She's been around forever, right?
Right. And I usually read her series under her pseudonym, under another series she writes under J.D. Robb. She writes under that name as well. So there's so much to go on. I mean, here's some of the titles of the workshops. Romance as a Site of Education, Challenge, and Hope. From Bodice Rippers to Bridgerton. On the public stage. I knew you'd like that. Black Romance Spotlight Collaboration. I mean, it just goes on, and I cannot wait. And this is called the literature of hope, because we all like a good, happy ending.
We do.
End.
We're all trying to keep hope alive.
I want to be clear.
Not easy all the time.
When I was laughing when Callie was talking, it was not what Callie was saying. Let me tell you something. If someone drives by Wellesley College, Callie mentions it. It is like, by the way, for those who don't know, she's a graduate and she's on the board. But I mean, and she is a loyal alum if there ever, what's that?
Let me interrupt you to say the Pourvu Center for Teaching and Learning is named after the Pourvu family, of which Leah Pourvu is one. And she's a former board member with me and a graduate of Wellesley College.
What a shock that is, Callie Crossley. Callie, it's great to see you.
So, Callie Crossley, let's talk about something that I don't know why I find this so upsetting. Just because, everybody watches late night TV from time to time and you have your favorites or you don't. This is a Rolling Stone piece that talks about Jimmy Fallon is a very, very, very bad boss. I was stunned.
Yeah, I mean, that's because the people that we like, or we just get so enamored of their talent, and nobody disagrees that he has talent. Even the people who are talking to this writer, Christy Lee Yandoli of Rolling Stone. I should note that she also wrote about the toxic environment at the Ellen show. And
I didn't know that was her.
Yes, and at Kelly Clarkson. So this is kind of, I think people are finding their way to her. She interviewed 50 Tonight Show employees, some past and present, all 9 showrunners. People should know that's the top person. And they came away saying there's good Jimmy days and bad Jimmy days, and they don't know what they're going to get. Some of them have said no one can tell him no. And so it just trickles down to them in humiliating, often, and debilitating ways. Some of them have left and some have been fired. My take on this is that, it's always hard when you hear this, but 50 is a lot.
That's a lot.
Well, can I correct you? It's worse. It's 50, and then they go on to say, then she reached out to another 30 current and former staffers. Listen to the sentence, Kelly. While many of this is of the 80 now, praised Fallon's immense talent and comedic gifts, not a single one agreed to speak on the record or had positive things to say about working for him.
Right. And I point out that meant all 9 of the showrunners.
Right.
Those are the top people.
Great point.
None of them would speak on the record to say that. And so I say that Jimmy Fallon has a girlfriend problem. He needs the power to give the power of the girlfriend to the showrunner, which means, your girlfriends will tell you the truth. They love you, but they'll say, that does not work, Marjorie. Callie, sit down. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they don't have a problem saying no. And obviously, all the people put in charge feel like they have no power to say anything back to him. He's apologized since then. There was even a little caca back and forth with Seinfeld. One incident got reported. Seinfeld claims it was not as it was reported, that it was a light thing. People laughed. Other people who reported to this Christy Lee Yandoli said otherwise. But there you have it. So one hopes, Kelly Clarkson was shocked and said she wanted to, get down to the nitty gritty. Sometimes what happens is the people at the top are so distant from the folks they have put in charge of running the operation that they actually don't hear. But you know what? I got to say, come on, people. You all know that you're in danger of having this happen all the time. Make sure you got somebody's ear to the ground who you can trust and who can bring back to you what's really happening. This is ridiculous.
Well, can I say a couple things about this? First of all, I assume I speak for all 3 of us. Our first concern are for the 80-plus people, and I'm sure hundreds more, who've been treated poorly by this. But you know what the lesson is for us? Is we think we know these people. We know Tom Brady. We know Jimmy Fallon. We know our favorite actor. We don't know anybody. We know their work. And so with the notion that we get sucked in about what a nice person or whatever they are, we have no idea what any of these people do in their own time. And we sort of, I guess the feeling is enjoy their art until you find out. Marjorie knows this. My favorite director of all time is Woody Allen. And I haven't seen a Woody Allen movie since I read the first story a decade or so ago. And I sort of feel the same way about Jimmy Fallon. What are you going to say?
I said, the old saying, talent forgives.
Yeah.
So, we're in that kind of trap where we see his talent, we the public, and his persona, and we can argue that as an actor and a performer, he can put on a persona. That's part of the gig. And we fall in love with that persona, and you can't imagine that the real person is doing something other than what comes across through the persona, and that's a shame.
We're talking to Callie Crossley from some romance event down there at Yale University.
Yeah, I know you're not interested in the romance fiction conference at Yale.
Yeah. But it's really, I don't see you as a romance fiction kind of reader, but this stuff is immensely popular. Millions and millions of people. It's a huge bestseller,
right? Let me correct you on one thing.
What?
Romance sales pay for in combination every other genre.
There you go. There you go.
It.
Because we're trying to keep hope alive in the romance front, Jim. And as you know, it's not always easy. So Jim Browdy's obsessed with cameras in the courtroom. Federal courts don't have cameras in the courtroom, and it's really, I think, a disgrace they don't have cameras in the courtroom either. But we've seen cameras in the courtroom down in Georgia with DA Fonnie Willis in the Trump election interference case, and Trump isn't there yet, obviously, but it seemed to go very, very well. The judge is going to allow everybody to use their laptops and their phones as long as they're not recording the goings-on. So I think it's going to be fine, I think.
Well, yeah, because this is a Fulton County rule.
Yeah.
So at any trial that happens there, it's going to be on camera, live streamed on the Fulton County provided YouTube channel and on TV live. Now, how could that change? If some of his co-conspirators or co-conspirators and he are successful in moving their cases to federal court. Federal court, as you know, Jim, because that's been your hobby horse and an appropriate one, you cannot have cameras in the courtroom. So we'll see. So if it moves to the federal court, we lose that accent. I think personally, we should be looking at this to see how the sausage is made.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I'll just repeat my own tired arguments. Not only do I believe it in general, because the Supreme Court of the United States, I wrote about this in the Globe a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court of the United States determined that we have a right to attend this is before the advent of current technology, a right to attend a criminal proceeding. Well, attending to me means if you can't physically be there or can't physically fit in the courtroom, you can attend in some other non-intrusive way. Most states allow cameras like Georgia, like Fulton County does. As you say, no federal. But I want to say one thing for those who just say, well, the feds don't allow it. The United States Congress could vote tomorrow to allow cameras, and they could do it in just this one case if they chose, because having a president of the United States on criminal trial is a fairly important thing.
Of course, the fat chance of that.
Justice Roberts single-handedly could determine that in this federal courtroom, whether it's Georgia transfer cases, New York, Mar-a-Lago, wherever it is, he could order cameras in the courtroom. And I think as an adjunct, as a piece of democracy, the American people are entitled to it. So that's the bottom line.
I agree, and I believe the reason that they're not doing it, obviously there are some Trump loyalists that, no matter what he does, as we've said, they're not going to go for that. But also, I think a lot of these people are afraid, if it ever lands on me, I don't want anybody looking at me.
I think that's exactly right, and it's sad. They're being prosecuted in our name, and we should be able to see. We're talking to Callie Crossley.
So Callie Crossley, this young woman, I don't know her, but she's on TikTok a lot. She has quite a few followers, 7,000 followers. Julia Mazer did this little posting about her nice Saturday day that was going to be very relaxing. She was going to do some food shopping, watch some, I think, Housewives of New York or something like that.
No, we have sound of her.
Do we have sound of her?
Yeah, here she is.
Oh, okay, here she is.
This is from her Pretty Much Done podcast. It's a TikTok thing about being, as Marjorie said, child-free on the weekend. She was met with immense backlash, even death threats. Here's a little bit of what she said on TikTok.
I'm 29 and single, and I don't have kids yet. I didn't rise from my bed until 10:15. Every time I thought, I should probably get up and do something, I thought, why? Nobody's making me. I'm not missing out on anything. I went to Beyonce last night, and I didn't get home until 1 a.m., and I danced and drank my little heart out, and I didn't pay a babysitter to watch my kids as I did that. And I woke up a tad hungover this morning, which is probably why I was in bed for so long, and I was just scrolling on my phone, and I saw a picture of shakshuka, and I thought, you know what sounds really good? Maybe I'm going to learn how to make shakshuka today.
So, and there was a huge backlash, as Jim just said. But you wrote a piece a while ago, I think it was in the wintertime, about why does anybody think that deciding not to have children is something that you should be contemptuous of? What'd you say?
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm like, when did this get to be an issue? You should be able to make a choice, a very important decision about whether or not to have children. Look at all these children who were born to parents who should not have had them, and knew before. Sometimes people don't know till after, which is a shame, but they knew before. I'm really not the parent type.
Yeah.
Usually what happens, and we should be clear about this, that there is the backlash is part of a culture war. And in this case, the hate threats and all of that, the trolling came from this guy, was led by this guy, rather, Matt Walsh. He's a conservative media provocateur who said of her initially, she's too stupid to know how depressing this is. But he is on a rant about, women should be having children and upholding the traditional family. And in fact, these women are called trad women or something in his group. Lots of folks came to her support, as you can imagine, but I was puzzled about why anybody would want to be in my business about not having children. If anything, I'd love to see the level of outrage about folks who are not taking care of their kids. And, oh, by the way, all of you people who are saying every woman should be having children, could you not have some support for the kids already here and the mothers already here who would like to have some support? To be clear, I addressed all of the common stereotypes about women who choose not to have children. I don't like kids. No, I love kids. I have 1,000 little auntie, niece, and nephews, and my own. I had a horrible mother. Love my mother. Everybody else loved my mother. Okay. I don't like men, which is a choice for a lot of people. I love men. I want the Prince Charming. Hello, I met the popular romance fiction. I just don't want the kids. I don't want the kids. I like the romance part. I don't want the other part. So I tried to address all of that in my commentary to let people know, A, this is a choice, and it's a wise choice for a woman who knows she does not want it. I said to my mother, my fabulous mother, you know what I realized? And she said, what? I think you'd be so great. I said, no, I realized this is a lifetime job. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people underestimate the time involved in raising children, especially women that are trying to do one of these huge career kind of things. You know what I wish, Callie, that they
sort of
do?
like a columnist for the Herald and the Boston Globe kind of thing?
So I was busy, very busy, very busy. But what I wish in all these things about women having children or shouldn't have children, I wish they'd go after the men, make sure the men that father these children could be paying the child support that often they get away with not paying ever. I mean, Massachusetts is better than other states, but there's millions of unpaid billions probably of unpaid child dollars that never get to the mothers or the children of men.
Well, I know that personally because that was the story for my divorced sister. She chased that man for I don't know out of how many courts to get the money. Oh, yeah.
Did she get it?
No.
Yeah.
She got a couple dribs and drabs, but
it's awful. It is just
really
awful.
Is.
It really is.
You know, Callie, what I'm sure you know because I've been doing this for a long time working with you, I always try to find a transition from one topic to another. It's hard to figure out a transition from being child-free to avocados. But so since I can't, let's just go to avocados. The only avocado I've ever heard of, I don't even know how to pronounce, is a Haas. Is that how you say it? Haas avocado, like 95% of them are Haas. I don't even know what the other 5% are. There's a lot of excitement. I don't know whether to be excited or not. That's why I'm asking you about this new Luna avocado. One, what is it? And two, should I be excited about it?
You should be excited. Sadly, it's not going to be on the market, for a couple of years, but if it goes at the pace it's going. But they're calling it kind of the great-granddaughter of the Haas avocado. It grows on a tree that goes up and down. That's a slender tree. I guess it's harder to pick the hosses. It takes more effort, but these are easily picked. They're smaller, and they are impervious to a lot of weather conditions that kill the other ones.
Yeah.
Which is, it makes the other ones so expensive. You know, they never kind of go down in price. They're always a little on the pricey side. So people are very excited about them because you can make more of them, and they have an excellent flavor. And, it doesn't mean that you would never have a Haas, but if you had an opportunity to have more avocado at a price that was a little bit more reasonable and just as delicious, why wouldn't you?
I also read they don't get sunburned, right? That a lot of avocados are very damaged by the sun, and
Yes,
which is
a lot of these weather conditions.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
these do not suffer those effects on their outside.
There's more tree canopy on the tree that these smaller lunas grow on, so that protects them.
Before we leave
I love avocados, and because of you, I know that if I want to get one ripe, I put it in a brown paper bag, and that really does work. It really does work. Yeah.
Not fast enough for me. Okay, so you're, I don't know if we told you, she's at this romance fiction conference.
She is. I'm very excited. I'm very excited
what are you
about
doing
it.
this
I wish
weekend?
I was at the romance fiction conference.
What are you doing on Under the Radar this weekend, Callie Crossley?
I have two exciting segments. We're talking about seaweed, and I know people have heard about it and know that it's in some foods like ice cream, but its popularity and its use has just doubled in the last 10 years, both as a foodstuff, I learned this morning, as fashion in clothing, but also as a possible tool for fighting climate change. Mm-hmm. So the seafood farms in Massachusetts there are more of them, still a small number, but in Maine, they're popping up like hotcakes because Maine has fewer regulations than Massachusetts. People won't be surprised. But the bottom line is that around here, our research scientists at Woods Hole and the folks that are doing the farms are very excited about what they're seeing as not only the growth and acceptance, but just how many more uses seaweed can be. And of course, it's all about sustainability with it. So that's fabulous.
What else?
Other thing we're doing, women's sports. We were thinking about doing this just, coming out of the World Cup and to talk about the bigger audiences. I'm sure you heard about the Nebraska game not long ago.
We talked about it.
Yeah.
92,000 people.
Unbelievable.
Right. So for years we've been saying growing. Well, it's grown. It's there. It's all, women's sports are drawing it. But in Boston, we're wondering, really, are we going to get serious? Well, now we are, as you know. Picked as one of 6 teams to be in this brand new professional hockey league. And it's 90% certain that the National Soccer League will pick Boston as well. So that's 2 big, really growth potential for here. Got to say, though, on the National Hockey League, we're still struggling around that money for the professionals who play. The top money for that league right now is at $80,000. We know we got a long way to go. But a great discussion with folks who really know their subject and can talk about, just the funding and the excitement and the, all the changes that are happening, hopefully for the better.
Callie, have fun. I know you're going to have huge fun.
Down
Look at
in
the
New
smile
Haven.
on her face.
Yeah, it's gonna be a really fun weekend. I got to look it up online and get all the info.
Great to see you,
Maybe
Callie.
I can go next year. Anyway, thank you very much, Callie. See you soon.
Bye.
We've been speaking with Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6 o'clock. She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Fridays at 7:30, and you can hear Callie's Callie commentaries on Mondays on GBH's Morning Edition. Thanks to Callie, and I hope she has a great time down there in New Haven at the Romance Conference. You won't be going there, Jim, but I'm going to check it out.
I was there last year.
Oh, yeah. After a quick break. All the latest in tech news from the incomparable Andy Ihnatko, from new iPhone chargers to AI.
iPhone? What is an iPhone?
iPhone chargers to AI in the classroom.
iPhone.
I know. Well, I have a pronunciation problem.
I was all excited. I thought there was a new found.
Doesn't mean you can't have a radio show, even if you can't talk. There's amazing what you can do. And I also.
By the way, I have an Android found. Do you know that? Thank you very much.
You're so funny.
Thank you.
Okay, do you know what your car knows about you, Jim?
Yes, everything.
Everything. We're going to talk about that as well. That was pretty horrifying. Andy Notko's next. Don't go away. Listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu. She'll join us 11 to 12 next Tuesday here at the Boston Public Library. We're joined now in person by, it doesn't happen often, by tech writer and blogger Andy Notko. You can follow Andy on Twitter. Whatever.
Don't humor him.
Exactly. You're totally right. On Twitter.
That's right.
At IHNATKO. Hello there, Andy.
Protest.
How are you? Yes.
Andy Notko, thank you very much for coming up from Rhode Island. Tell us about, this is kind of exciting, the big change now with iPhone's charging port that was thrust upon them by the European Union, apparently. Is that the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Apple, they're a great company, but they hate doing anything because someone else told them they had to do it. And one of the weirdest choices that they've made...
So do I, by the way. But
no, again, I'm not worth $2 trillion. I mean, when I have a fit, very few people get affected by it.
Can't you see Steve Jobs as a 15-year-old with terrible authority problems? I mean, it continued his whole life, didn't it? The company still got them.
I personally saw him as a 42-year-old with terrible authority problems.
You did? You saw him? Where'd you see him?
I had my one extended conversation with him was at the opening of the very first Apple store in Soho.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah, it was. What happened was I was there early, and so he was there early, and there were very few people there. I was talking to a friend of mine who happened to be the CEO of a large publishing company. I'm having a good time with him, and then suddenly, this person just sort of sidles in, and we're standing 2 feet from each other, and I see this presence that's sort of 45 degrees wedged in between us, and I'm like, oh gosh, that's Steve Jobs. It's like, okay, so that's nice. I'm gonna have, and it was fascinating because he just started talking to my friend because he wanted to have a conversation with my friend. And I'm like, okay, well, at some point there'll be a pause. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. Hi, yeah, I'm Andy Notko, nice to meet you. Of course I know who you are. Ha, 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 ha. And I'd have a story to tell people. But he was ignoring me. And then I'm like, I start to find this hysterically funny. And so I'm like going to see. And then I start doing things like interjecting into this conversation that was interjected upon me. And I would see him, I'm sorry for people who are listening, but people on YouTube, if I'm Steve Jobs and you're me, you make a comment that he flinches and but immediately goes back to the person he wanted to talk to. And I'm like, I'm not going to slink away. I'm going to see how long this can last. And so for 15 to 20 minutes, I just got to stand there and be completely ignored by Steve Jobs standing 12 inches away from me. And the punchline to this is that I'm going to have to come away from this with something. So I just sort of did one of these, and I got the size of his jeans from the tag on the back of his pants.
Oh, do tell.
It was a 34-inch waist. I believe it was an inseam of 29 to 30.
Yeah.
Or, I forget.
34-inch waist sounds
So
you
were very close friends, essentially, after that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, you were.
But, I mean, if anybody's read these biographies of Steve Jobs, or the one that his daughter...
We had his daughter in the studio.
Yeah, which was a very sad interview, actually. I mean, he was a troubled individual, I think. Genius, but a troubled individual.
He was truly, I don't say this lightly, he was truly a genius. He truly had insights. As much abuse as stories like the one I just told give you, and there are thousands just like that. Inside of Apple, he was famous for like being sort of what you would call today the anti-Elon. Where, yes, he would say, no, this new iPhone, we're not going to have an app store on this. That's stupid. We're not going to allow people to install their own apps on it. And as would happen, the people that he surrounded himself with people that he trusted and people that he respected, and they knew that this wasn't, oh my God, we must never bring up an app store to Steve ever again. It's like, okay, he doesn't get it yet. We're gonna have to put together a better argument. And then a week later, he would be, okay, I get it now. I'm all in on this. And so that's why I have to have a tremendous amount of respect for him, because again, he was not fun to be at a party with. However, you do see that ability to say, you know what, I don't get this, but it's your job to convince me of this. And if you can convince me of this, then I know that you've got your information right and you've done research.
Okay.
And now I'll be behind you.
So he's dead. Let's talk about the new iPhone and this universal port thing.
Right.
Which I thought was great until I read a little further. You think that ultimately it's not going to be a universal port, there's going to be no port. Is that where you're thinking?
Yeah, and again, and we get back to Apple, they like to do things the way they want to do it. Everybody uses, like I have an Apple iPad in front of me, it uses USB-C. That's just the name of the connector, not necessarily what it's used for. It's just, so basically the same charger that I use to charge my Android phone, the same charger I use to charge the camera that's in that bag, everything, the same cable, everything. For years, however, since 2012, Apple has used a proprietary connector they call the Lightning port. That is that little tiny little thumbnail, fingernail that goes in there. And they have like, well, why are you not switching to USB-C? The entire world has switched to USB-C, and we don't know why. Now, finally, the EU, a couple of years ago, passed a law that says that by the end of 2024, all chargers for all mobile devices sold in the EU have to be USB-C.
For environmental reasons,
exactly, because when people buy like a brand new phone, you can't have them throwing away all their cables and all their chargers. And so Apple, again, that's why I say they're kicking and screaming. They haven't announced anything yet. It's not happening until Tuesday, but now it's pretty much known that they're going to make that change. But the interesting part of this, the thing that makes it so Apple, is that there's been some stories for a number of years that they didn't want to switch from Lightning to USB-C. They wanted the next big shift in charging and data connection to be Lightning to nothing. To give you, they already took away the headphone jack, so they want the iPhone eventually to have no connectors on it whatsoever. So if you have to charge it, you have to charge it wirelessly.
What's the problem with? I am a big wireless person, and in fact, I was so excited. I was talking to Jamie about this morning at a brewery right near GBH. I met about 2 years ago the guy who runs a company called Witricity it's in Watertown, and they are developing. I think they still are. Wireless charging for your EV, which would be absolutely huge. Yeah. But you contend that in the phone computer world, wireless charging in my level of excitement is way out of whack.
There are a couple of problems with it. Number one, technically speaking, it's really inefficient. That's why your phone and the charger get really hot or get warm when you charge it, because it's converting a lot of that electricity to waste to waste heat instead of the actual charge. And heat to a battery, it damages the battery, so that's going to nick the life of the battery. So that's one thing. Secondly, it means that you no longer have the ability to simply plug in a cable and recharge your phone. Like you said, I came up here on commuter rail from Rhode Island, so I basically have a little battery bank, and I have when I need to top off my phone, I can simply plug it in, leave it inside the bag, or even leave it inside my pocket and use it that way. Without that charging port, I'm going to have to buy a brand new battery bank that has wireless charging, or carry a special proprietary cable for wireless charging to connect that battery bank. I have the same argument against it that I had when they deleted the headphone jack. Apple's doing this because it makes the iPhone easier to manufacture, cheaper to manufacture. There are no benefits to the consumer. So this is a case of Apple taking something useful away and not giving me something back in return.
The first point you mentioned, Eddie and Notco, a minute ago, I don't want to obsess on this. We'll move on in a second. But when you talk about how it can shorten the battery life, is there also an environmental problem with wireless or no?
Not necessarily, unless you count the fact that, again, people like me are going to have to buy an extra charging cable that they didn't necessarily need before, and maybe the old cables are going to basically, instead of keeping this one thing, this one static cable that will charge everything, now I have to put another piece of electronics into the world. And also, I just don't like the fact that I'm going to have to buy a brand new battery bank because I'm really not going to. I've had to carry around the charger for my phone and for my Apple Watch. It's a bummer if it runs out. You can't just simply wear it and charge at the same time. You have to basically not use it while it's
so essentially the message is enjoy the universality while you can, because it's probably going to disappear.
Yeah, it's going to be hysterically funny when they do, if and when they do make the switch. If they do, it won't be for another 3-4 years, according to a really, really well-connected,
to wireless only,
well-connected person who talks about such things. But it's going to be hysterically funny to hear them talk about, we solved the problem of charging. Don't worry, you never have to see a USB-C cable ever again. We're all taking bets on when they announce the USB-C port. Are they going to say that, yes, a lot of our competitors rushed to the market with half-done answers. We waited, and we wanted to give our customers the best USB-C charger. You're welcome.
And that's coming with a new phone, right?
That's going to come with a new phone. All new phones released announced on Tuesday, probably pre-orders that Friday, releasing the week after that.
We're talking to Andy and Notco.
So thanks, apparently, to the Mozilla Foundation, they're big on privacy. I now know that my little Toyota RAV4 is spying on me. It knows when I accelerate, when I brake, when I steer. It knows which radio stations or other media I stream while I'm driving, when and where I do that, who else is in the car when all that happens. I mean, this is making me very hostile toward my little Toyota RAV4 out there. I had no idea that the car collected all this data and that Toyota or General Motors, whoever else it is, can sell it?
Yeah, pretty much everybody. The Mozilla Foundation, they're very, very committed to privacy and security for everybody, so they do research like this. So they decided to take a look at the privacy policies of 25 major automakers, and this is where lawmakers actually have come through for us. The EU and California have both passed laws that says that, look, if you're collecting data, you have to disclose somewhere on your website what data you're collecting and how you might be using it. And for that reason, each one of these companies, Nissan, Honda, GM, Audi, Mercedes, everybody has to have a privacy policy statement that says specifically, here's what we're collecting from you, what we might do with it. And so after taking a look at 25 of these privacy policies, they declared that cars are the worst product category we have ever reviewed for privacy. And they have reviewed every single Google hardware product too. So that's really saying something. So basically, to cut it down to one simple thing, essentially all these privacy policies say that, hey, we are going to collect literally every piece of data we can possibly collect from you, from every asset we have in the car. We are also maybe even going to buy information from outside parties so we can infer other facts about you. And in most of the cases, we can also sell that data on to a third party. And the depth of this data is astounding. Nissan's is hysterically funny because it's also saying, you'd think that, okay, so it knows what I'm using the steering wheel, it knows when I'm braking, accelerating. You might even say, gosh, what a horrible situation. They even know what radio stations I'm listening to and when I change the station. They're also saying that, yeah, we're also going to collect your sexual preference and your sexual activity.
In the car?
In the car. It's stated.
Well, I would say if you're having sexual activity in the car, they should feel free to collect it. Wait a second. How do they know what your sexual preference
America.
is?
What about lovers'
Or your
lanes?
sexual orientation is?
Unknown. This is in Nissan's case, I'm betting they're not specifically talking about they've got cameras. They've got cameras and microphones listening for certain cues. I believe that that's a case of they're creating inferences so that if they want to sell a package of data upon you that wants information about you, they can say, oh yeah, well, this person is sexually active. We have inferred that they have sex 2 or 3 times a day. We know that they are heterosexual. We know that this. So, but however, nothing is keeping them from using the microphones, using the cameras.
What about the rear view mirror? I bet I'm looking through that.
Absolutely.
And they are looking through that?
No, I'm saying that they're claiming the ability to do that.
Oh,
I mean, in this document, they're basically saying that if we have a sensor to record something, we will record it. If we have the ability to buy information about you, your employment history, your credit history, where you went to school, we will buy that and aggregate that into the collection that we're dated. And again, in most cases, if we want to sell this to a third party, not even necessarily someone in the car industry, we will do that too. It seems very much as though making and selling cars is their side business.
And by the way, I have a Tesla, as you may or may not know, which I assume is 4,000 times worse in terms of collection. The other thing I don't understand, I have this discussion with you almost every single month. I am pro-disclosure. I'm a big transparency kind of person. Disclosure is borderline worthless. I mean, it's better than no disclosure. The reality is the vast majority of us don't read that stuff. We don't know. It isn't like we know how to opt out if there's a way to opt out. I understand why whole legislative bodies don't vote not just to disclose, but to ban this collection of data because they're owned by these companies. Why is there not an individual legislator in Massachusetts, for example, who we know the name of, who's become the champion of protection of our privacy in our cars? Why is this not a campaign? Especially as cars. My car is like a computer. No, they didn't. They're not doing it.
Not on this, but they did on the iPhone.
I know, no, but all they're doing on this is mandating disclosure. Which again, I don't. When was the last time you read the disclosure documents on your phone?
Yeah, but Jim, you just answered your own question.
What is it?
You just said that they are disclosing by law every piece of information that they collect, but nobody reads it. When you go to a lawmaker saying that, hey, people are so numbed to being able to fight back against this stuff that if you give them, here is a URL, it costs nothing. Did you know that your car knows like when you shift in your seat? Do you know that it's taking camera information? Do you know that when you connect your phone to it, if you on your iPhone tap the button and say yes, I approve this centered console dash giving access to my contacts so I can do direct dialing. Yes, they're going to take that data and sell it too. All that stuff is right there, but no one's taking a look for it.
Yeah, but
it's really hard to get a lawmaker to say, I'm going to invest the political capital to fight this fight for people who don't care.
Except, I would assume a lot of us do care about privacy. Marjorie says, because I'm slinking around. There could be, speaking of universality, you know what the universal rule should be? Not to ban data collection, but to make every data collection from every product an opt-in. That's all they got to do, is say, if you want them to collect the data, it is perfectly fine. You just check the box. It's not an opt-out, because almost no one opts out. It's an opt-in, and there should be universality of opting in terms of data collection anywhere.
I agree with you. This system is often proposed and often abused, where they will simply make it difficult for you not to opt in. That's called the dark selector that the user interface designers do. They are basically trying to wire this up to make it not desirable for you to take advantage of your rights. However, I think that should go one step further. I do think that the basis of privacy law should be that your personal information, and again, the state of California defines personal information in a very, very strict way that's very, very sensible. Your personal information is your property, and it cannot be sold. It can only be licensed, and that license has to be renewed on an annual basis. So if it means that Nissan has to ask me once a year to renew its license, it has to do that. It has to stop the car, or basically do something disruptive so that if I want to be completely ignorant, sure, I can be ignorant. But if I'm aware of this sort of stuff, I can say, no, you're not allowed to do that. Furthermore, and this is a component of a lot of privacy legislation that's already on the books, if I ask you to delete all my personal information, you have to delete all my personal information. But again, the step one is establishing that this is my personal property, and you can't simply take it, and you can't simply inform me that you took it. You have to basically renew your lease every year and get rid of it if I tell you not to.
Do you remember, Marjorie, about 20 years ago on the air, maybe a little bit less than that, we were speaking to a congressman who was Ayanna Pressley's predecessor, Michael Capuano from Somerville.
Oh,
he was sponsoring a legislation that was opposed by Verizon and a bunch of others because he contended, and we laughed at him. Obviously, we laughed and were wrong, that our cable box was doing the exact same thing that this Missoula, is that what it's called?
Mozilla. Mozilla did the research.
Right, did the research, is suggesting is happening with your car. And it is amazing to me, when you say political capital, the fact that we are so lax about protecting our own privacy and that we don't give politicians points when they do attempt to protect our is pathetic. It's sort of like giving up, like so many people in this country have done.
That's why I think that there's sort of a 50-50 relationship where I think it's that lawmakers have a responsibility to create laws that are enforceable and that will protect people. However, we also have the requirement to basically say that just because someone standing up on the street corner is cooking hot dogs and selling it to you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're safe to eat. We have to know. This is part of the basic literacy that generation after generation we have to build upon. The assumption that we shouldn't be necessarily worried about Google and Facebook so much as we are about 1,000 media companies, marketing companies whose names we don't know about, because they're the ones who are taking information from every single website and building these profiles and selling it to anybody who asks for it, including law enforcement.
You ever had a Sabret's hot dog on a corner in New York City?
I have never. I've been very brave for many ways in New York City. I have taken the subway at 2:10 a.m. I have taken an Amtrak train that got me into Times Square at 2:30 and walked 30 blocks. However, I have never eaten a hot dog from a cart vendor.
I am proud to say I've had hundreds.
You know, we're out of time, but what you just mentioned about the cops is important to point out because your memo points out to us, Google won't hand over your data to law enforcement without a legal request backed by a court order, but card companies often comply with even a casual request for your data based on no suspicion of guilt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really horrifying.
That's why, again, I think Google gets a bad rap. They should have their feet held to the fire because they do a lot of very sketchy and suspicious things. However, historically, they say that, look, we will comply with local laws. However, you don't just come knocking on a door and say, hi, we're curious about Andy Ihnatko's privacy browsing history. They will say, great, hey, if this is really important, I bet you got a court order. Love to see it. We'll get to a process for that for you immediately. Just to wind things up, it's not just that. You think about all this data that's being collected, how secure and safe are they keeping that data when they have it? You know, there are data breaches at Mercedes-Benz, data breaches at VW, each affecting 1 million or 2 users. Tesla, I hate to say it, but Reuters had a story in April about how, it's surrounded by cameras and the internal network at Tesla, people whose job it was to sort of have access to that and monitor it for like performance stuff, they were taking, oh wow, look at that, that's a really funny thing about how that bicyclist almost got run over. And they would basically turn it into a meme and send it to all their friends on the network. Video of front-facing cameras where of someone who, have you ever been like, it's 2 a.m., you forgot something in the car, you were sleeping naked, it's like, hey, I'm just going from my bedroom down to the garage. Inside, I don't necessarily have to put clothes on. Well, guess what? Your Tesla woke up, was taking pictures, and some of those people said, "Oh, wow, look,
can I say that's a big issue because a lot of people I know go to their car naked in the middle of the night.
Well, if you have a garage,
it's quite refreshing.
If you have a garage,
in Cambridge, you don't even need a garage. You just go. By the way, the most concerning part of this, you know what I do whenever I'm going to floss in my Tesla? I look around at the red light to see if anybody's there. When no one's there, I floss. Now we know they're watching me floss. I mean, that's the problem.
It's probably not as bad as that, but that does point out that they don't keep good control of the data. They should have firewalled all that data so that it was impossible for that to go out of anybody's computer for any reason other than the quality assurance and safety reasons for which they had access to that to begin with.
Well,
so you can't trust people.
I guess
you can't trust these companies to take good care of your data. That's why you don't give them your data.
Back in your car today, watch out.
By the way, I use Q-tips in my car too. I use Q-tips in my car. Red lights. Don't you? I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, somebody just texted say they've seen your Tesla rocking in Cambridge on a regular basis.
Funny. So that's not funny. Goodbye, Andy. It's nice to see you. Andy Ihnatko, thank you so much.
We've been speaking with Andy Ihnatko, tech writer and blogger. You can follow him on Twitter, or we're not going to call it X today. I just did.
X-Twitter.
X-Twitter.
The problem place.
That's right. Ihnatko, by the way, is spelled Ihnatko. Andy Ihnatko, thank you so much. After a quick break, Chris Basili of Boston Fisheries Foundation and Paul Vincent Hagen III of Denarius Trading Company join us ahead of this weekend's 10th annual Boston Seafood Festival. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us for Ask the Mayor on Tuesday here. She'll be with us at the library at 11 to 12. Let me just say before I introduce our guest, this is one of the happiest segments I've ever introduced. Here's why. Our guest brought lobster rolls, one of my favorite foods. Marjorie doesn't like them. Our guest brought oysters, one of my favorite foods. Marjorie doesn't like them.
Why do you have to say
However, they also brought beer. Marjorie does like beer.
That's right.
In any case, here's who these people are. We're joined now by Chris Basile and Paul Vincent Hagen III. They're here to tell us about this weekend's Boston Seafood Festival. More information, we'll give you this website again, bostonseafoodfestival.org. Chris is president of the Boston Fisheries Foundation nonprofit, created to preserve, sustain, and share the city's seafood and maritime heritage. Paul is owner of Denarius, is that how you say that?
Yes,
Denarius Trading Company, seafood wholesaler located on the Fish Pier. Chris and Paul, it's great to see you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for inviting us.
So,
Thank you.
I didn't tell you, Paul, I read about you in a piece on massfoodcollaborative.com.
Oh, yeah.
And how you work like 9,000 hours a week and every single solitary day. But you know what really made me feel good? I don't know if your wife is here. Is your wife here today?
She's not. She's probably listening.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Don't get me in trouble.
No, but you said sitting next to your wife all day long, as you apparently do, makes you the luckiest man in the world.
Oh.
How lovely was that? So she's a very lucky woman, too. So
Yeah,
very
thank
good.
you.
Lovely shout out to your wife. But
By the way,
us,
Chris is the only person who applauded for that in the whole studio.
Well, my
I don't know
wife,
what that
wife's in
means.
the audience.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Where's she?
Yeah.
Where's Chris? Hello,
Sitting with
Chris's
a gold
wife. How are
dress
you?
on.
Okay.
Nice to see you.
So Chris, why don't you tell us what's going to go on? Tell us about the festival.
So Sunday is we shut down the whole Boston Fish Pier, and this festival, by the way, takes us all year to plan for. It's a one-day festival, and it's to celebrate the seafood industry in Boston. As you know, Boston is the hub of the universe when it comes to seafood. More fish is shipped in and out of Boston than almost anywhere.
Really?
What about New Bedford? New Bedford's a big deal,
New
too,
Bedford
right?
has a lot of scallops.
Oh, scallops,
And
okay.
they do some flatfish.
Okay.
Lobsters.
Okay.
And they do, that is a big port, but I think Boston is...
So what happens at the festival? What's the deal? You're, I assume, a participant in this deal,
Yeah,
yes?
we're there. So my facility's on the Boston Fish Pier.
This is Paul talking, yeah.
Yeah. So actually, Chris makes me close. That's one day I do get off. Chris closes the pier, and I have to stop
That's
working
good.
that day. So yeah, we're there. But it's like Chris mentioned, it's the oldest functioning fish pier in the country. And not a lot of people know that, but we ship seafood all over the world. That one day, though, we close and all these vendors show up and they're doing, raw bars and chowder and lobster rolls, and it's all for a nonprofit. So it's fun for everybody.
How is the state of the industry, though, Chris? I mean, we've talked a lot on the show through the years about some of the catch limits and, environmentalists on one side, particularly in the time of climate change, people who've made their whole lives and their families before them, they're living in the fishing industry, feeling they're being put out of business. What's the state of affairs?
We saw this coming years ago, and you saw it in the 70s and 80s and 90s, where the fishing industry is so highly... And by the way, the fishing industry in the United States is the most regulated industry in the world. There is no other country that regulates their fishermen the way that we do.
Okay.
We saw this coming, and there is a bunch of political action groups out there that are talking about the seafood industry. But we wanted to go right to to our audience, which are consumers, and that's why we put the festival on.
What happens? I mean, what do people? What happens? First of all, who made? I just tasted the lobster roll. It's fabulous. Who made that?
Paul made them.
It's your place?
No, it's
Well, whose is it? Who made it?
Chris made it. We'll share the credit though.
It's fabulous.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
really
you. Fresh
fabulous.
lobster meat goes a long way.
It's really, really good.
Yeah, and you're doing the mayonnaise. That's always a big debate, right? Do you do the mayonnaise? Do you do the butter?
How much mayonnaise? Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
how
it
much
a little
mayonnaise?
bit? Is it a lot? You try and go a little bit.
I think it looks perfect.
So, Phil, I keep interrupting you after I ask the question. What do you get when you show up at this deal?
So we shut down the whole Boston Fish Pier, and if you've been to the Fish Pier, it's 1,800 feet long, 600 feet wide, and there are two main buildings, and going right down the center. We take the center of the Fish Pier on both sides and fill it with tents with food vendors. Division of Marine Fisheries will be there. NOAA will be there. Fishing Partnership will be there. We have an oyster shucking contest.
fish cutting this year, fish cutting demo.
Fish cutting demonstration.
Yeah.
We've got kids' activities with face painting.
You get to eat. All I care about is eating.
All you can eat.
It is all you can eat?
So wait a minute.
So what do you buy a ticket?
No, it's not all you can eat. No.
Well, what is it? How
so
does
you
the
buy a
eating
ticket.
work?
You go online, Boston Seafood Festival.org, and you can purchase a ticket.
And then what happens?
And come to the festival.
Public transportation is important.
Yes, definitely take public transportation.
Bad.
Okay, get
it's
there
a
with
very
my
popular
ticket.
thing.
What do I get to eat?
So, well, did you buy your ticket already?
I haven't, but
the first
assume I
500.
do.
The first 500 got part of our Bites program.
What does that
which
mean?
there are a bunch of samples that if you came, were one of the first.
Okay,
500.
let's assume I'm 501. What happens? What happens?
So come to the festival. There'll be a lot of seafood vendors there selling seafood. We have an all-day lobster bake in the end of the pier. There's going to be a lot of seafood. Trucks and restaurants selling seafood.
Okay, can you hand over the crab cakes while Marjorie asks the next question?
The crab cakes are very
Thank you
good.
very much.
So, Paul, what do you do at Denarius? I mean, you described a little bit of your day, but what exactly is it you do?
So we're a seafood distribution company.
Yep.
So different from what Chris does. Chris delivers to restaurants locally in Boston. We ship seafood all over the country. So we basically buy large volume and palletize seafood and send it to different places, Florida, Texas, DC, New York. But on any given day, we'll have over 50 varieties of oysters in our building from all over the world. We import from Europe. We're bringing things in from Canada every day. So we're pretty unique. We're a small company. You obviously did your research, 5 people.
Yeah.
But we're there 7 days a week.
And what do people want from Boston? What is the big thing people want from Boston? Is there a big fish that's more popular?
Well, it's really a combination of everything like Chris mentioned, because we are the hub.
Yeah.
And to give you an example too, like we're waiting on a lot of trucks to get to Boston so we can redistribute through the country. An example would be like halibut. Everybody loves halibut. That's all from Digby, Nova Scotia. So we offload Canadian trucks on 3 or 4 days a week, bringing in tens of thousands of pounds of halibut in Boston, going directly to New York, going directly to Texas, and all throughout the country. So it's also the cold water, so it's all the ground fish that the Boston Fish Pier is actually offloading.
Yeah.
So we have cod, haddock, pollock, hake, redfish, all this stuff that's being offloaded right on the Boston Fish Pier, that goes throughout the country. The oysters are phenomenal. Like New England is the oyster mecca of the entire country, and it's really the cold water that we have here. So New England, New Hampshire, we actually own an oyster farm in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Maine. All these oysters are just going all over the country.
Do you think you can shuck a damn oyster while you're talking about it?
That's one of the
So I
things.
can
It's
eat
going to
one?
be a contest. Okay, Paul's giving us a demonstration, but that's what people are
I
going to
can't
do.
believe
They're
you're
going
not wearing a glove or anything.
I don't
when you're
wear a
doing
glove.
this?
It's pretty wild, isn't it? Yeah, I don't. You can't feel
Well,
the
that
oyster.
was very
Yeah.
impressive. For people who don't know how to shuck an oyster, I can, but I literally have almost metal gloves on when I do it.
Yeah, that's smart. That or a dish
Okay,
towel.
right
You don't
on
want to
here.
stab yourself.
Thank you.
But that's the contest, Chris, right?
Well,
How fit
Paul
people can
was very
fash?
brave. You saw how he held the knife.
Yeah.
I hold the knife so that
Oh my
there's
God.
only about a half inch of the blade sticking
Fabulous.
out. So if I do slip, only a half inch is going into my hand.
So,
That's great.
Only a half inch.
only a half inch.
Only a
I
half
want to
inch.
talk to you.
So,
for,
wait,
no.
wait.
I want to. There's no conflict. I want to generate some conflict. So you have the Boston Fisheries Foundation. I was talking to someone, a friend of ours, who you may have heard of, Roger Berkowitz, this morning.
Yes.
I wanted to find out if you're the real
Jim's a
deal.
big name dropper.
So he is coming for the first time. Do you know he's coming to this thing?
No.
He's
Oh,
never
no,
been
to the festival.
Yeah, he's coming. He's never been to
he's
the
a great
festival
guy.
before. He's coming on behalf of the Mass Seafood Collaborative.
Yep.
So what's the relationship between the Boston Fisheries Foundation, which you're the president of, and the Mass Seafood Collaborative?
All right. So what started about 12 years ago was the Boston Fisheries Foundation. Robert Nagel and myself co-founded it and started. We saw a need for a festival in Boston, which has never been a festival in Boston for a whole seafood festival, and so that's our 501c3, which is non-profit, non-political. Well, there is a need for a political entity in Boston. And Robert, he asked me to help him with it, but I'm busy and I couldn't. So he asked a bunch of other people to help him start this collaborative.
Oh, this Mass Seafood Collaborative thing.
Which they've done. And they've done a great job bringing awareness to the industry. And you have to understand, the industry is a bunch of small businesses, all family owned. And it's like herding cats, trying to get these guys to work together.
You calling me a cat?
You're right?
No, I think he's calling Roger Berkowitz. Go ahead.
And Roger is helping spearhead this whole effort to get the politicians to work with us to help the seafood industry thrive. It's one of those industries that if you think about the protein industries, beef, chicken, any lamb, they have a large consortium of people that work together.
Yeah.
The seafood industry is not like that. We are a bunch of small family businesses that need to come together.
Who made the crab cakes?
Paul.
Wait, this is total crap. There's no way that the two of you made all this stuff. Who made the crab?
He was calling me last night, and we got some stuff together.
No, I made them this morning.
Did you really make them?
Yeah.
They're fabulous.
My
really
business
delicious.
has always been seafood. I was in the seafood restaurant industry.
Don't you? Seawitch. Is that you, Seawitch?
I'm Seawitch.
That's what you're.
But I used to be Quarter Deck Seafoods. I had a restaurant, a couple of restaurants.
I know you did. Yeah. What happened to them?
I smartened up and got into the wholesale end.
Okay.
Yeah, but you do read a lot about climate change affecting the water, getting warmer. So the lobsters that used to be here are moving north and north and north. I mean, what is this going to mean, like 20, 30 years down the road?
How about tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I think these guys have to get used to it.
What? The lobsters have to get used to it?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going away, right?
We're looking for on climate change. Get over it.
Yeah.
Wait a second. What does that mean? I mean, what does that mean?
I think the water is warming up. I am not an expert on climate change, so please don't.
We aren't either. It's okay.
Good. And you hate to see the water warm up the way it is because it is affecting sea life.
Yeah.
But I think what's affecting sea life more, and I think it's going to hurt, are the windmills that they're putting off.
What do you think about that? But there's a difference of opinion. Some say they're a real problem for fisheries. Some people they're not. Why do you think it's a problem?
Well, being in the industry and talking to a bunch of different people in the industry, when they put these windmills out there that are bigger than the Prudential building, they're huge.
Yep.
They vibrate. So what does that vibration do to the water? What does that do to the fishing industry close to shore, which is an estuary, right? This is where the baby fish come to spawn and bring more fish out into the wild. So I think the jury's out on that. And then also...
In fairness, though, the windmills they're talking about, the wind farm off Martha's Vineyard is going to be way out.
But it's still, those are fishing grounds.
Yeah, it's far from shore, though.
But the fish have to come in to spawn.
Well, they do it to fit, but that's closer to shore. I mean, I think that's probably going to be
so there are points out there that I don't think are being brought up, and I think that's one
Chris,
big one.
Tell the truth. We don't care what you think about windmills. we care what Paul's wife thinks about windmills. What's your wife's name?
What does Valentina think about windmills?
What's your wife's name?
Valentina.
That's great.
She's from Italy. She's been in the country about 7 years
What
now.
does she think about windmills?
I don't know. I know when
Maybe you want to talk to her.
Why don't you ask her about
I wish
what
I had
she
asked her
thinks
this
about
before I came over here today. I should have known
lobsters.
better.
Okay, forget the politics.
Crabs.
We discuss now. By the way, Marjorie's not an outlier. I have to say, until I was 50, I never enjoyed oysters, and now it's one of my 2 or 3 favorite foods.
Wow.
So why don't you, starting with you, Paul, make a little pitch for those who are turned off. They think they're slimy. They're you know what all the negatives are.
Sure.
Make the pitch to a nervous potential oyster consumer.
All right,
do your best. Go ahead.
Well, tell me to shut up because I'll talk for an hour about it.
Take an hour.
Whenever
It's
you're
okay.
satisfied,
It's
I'm done talking.
Okay, fine. I'll tell you when to stop.
It's an unadulterated food.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. So it uses the ecosystem around it to grow. So it's a filter feeder. So it's taking things out of the water and using that to
Stop right there. It's taking things out of the water, Marjorie. Okay. Next, go ahead.
It feeds off algae, so you're not feeding it anything. It's not
Stop feeding algae.
Good to eat the algae.
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Next. Calcium. So the ocean acidification going on, it reduces that level because it's made out of calcium, the shells. Clears the water that it lives in, so sunlight can penetrate the water and then grow eelgrass.
Exactly.
Now,
we're losing.
I think if Valentina were here, she would point out that oysters are also an aphrodisiac. Isn't that what?
Well, I think
said?
that's why Jim likes them now after 50.
By the way, let's stop. Of the audience here, how many people like oysters? Raise your hands. That is pathetic. Now,
it's like 50%.
For those, it's about 40%. Of the people who like oysters, how pathetic do you think it is that Marjorie, who's a grown woman, will not try an oyster?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of grief about this over my life.
I'm talking to them. I'm not talking to you.
Have you tried one?
I have tried them.
No,
I
that is a lie.
very much an outlier in my family because we had steamers on Friday night, and my
I don't like
parents
this.
loved to get.
But they're cooked, right? So is it the raw thing that you don't like?
Good questioning, by the way.
It's the raw thing.
Yeah, okay.
It's the slippery thing.
So you'd eat a fried oyster roll then if they were at the seafood festival.
I've eaten fried oysters.
You have really?
Yeah.
the way, speaking of slippery, does your wife Valentina have a position on whether or not someone could slip on a piece of prosciutto at the Italy and sue for $50,000? You know what her position is on that?
I'm pleading the fifth because Italy's a customer of mine.
Really?
So I'm not saying anything about that.
Thank you for your honesty.
Italy did nothing wrong. We're a little suspicious.
According to Liliana.
Great pizza.
Yeah.
Good food there. I love
No, we had a caller who said that you can't slip on prosciutto.
It wasn't a caller, it was Liliana.
Liliana, who said you can only slip on mortadella.
Do we have that available, by the way? Can we get that available in like 30 seconds?
She's the only one that could.
Well, if you come down to the fish pier and you go into the fish wholesalers, it is very slippery. So if you'd like to come down, I'd love to show you guys around.
Okay,
so you know what else we should do? Hold on for a second,
yes,
please.
okay.
I like to have a question in here every once in a while.
Well, you're destroying their business. Like
Not
every
destroying
minute here,
their
I'm trying to help
business.
them.
Everybody likes seafood. Or most people like seafood. But, we should give a shout out to fishermen because it is one of the toughest jobs in the world. Not to be a fisherman. I mean, these guys risk it, and women too, risk their lives, and they're out there.
It's the dangerous.
It's the most dangerous profession there is. I used to work down in New Bedford. You see that huge fish pier. You go to the fish when they're selling the fish in the morning. It's so exciting. They come in with the fish off the boats. We once caught fish from fresh fish, ice fishing. Remember that years ago, Jim? We were ice fishing.
No.
And I never had anything
Actually,
in my
I
life
do. It was
like
incredible.
a fresh fish,
I caught a fish
out of the water.
I cooked it. I caught a fish.
Yeah. So what is that? I mean, it's fresh, obviously, but why is it that it's so important to keep? And how do you do it? Is it just tons of ice?
So there's a little controversy there. So first of all, fishermen are the salt of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. And we'll have
It's actually not the earth, the salt of the
sea. Salt of the sea. We'll actually have a bunch of fishermen there mending nets and showing people how to make nets.
I love that.
Neat.
Yeah, it's a lost art that is. I'd like to. If you've ever watched the fishermen on the dock mending the nets, it's like the wind going through the nets, and it's all fixed. And it's a lost art, so we wanted to bring that back. So the fishermen will be there. So to your question with fish, should it be brand new off the boat? A lot of times the fish is too fresh when we get it.
Really?
It sounds silly, but it's in rigor, and it's too hard to cut.
Oh, like rigor mortis?
Yes. So you have to let it rest for a couple of days.
You and Roger should talk. Roger's talking about his new Roger's Fish Company with nitrogen and something like that. You're going to tell someone what's happening. Your client's going to love this, by the way. Here's Liliana. She's almost 80, she said. She called in the other day. She was not happy with the woman who said she slipped on a piece of prosciutto at Italy and suffered $50,000 of some sort of personal damage. Here's the great Liliana from Fall River.
That was a great clip.
Here it is.
Oh, please. First of all, prosciutto is a cured meat, and it does not have the greasy shine.
That's a very good point, actually.
The mortadella has.
Exactly.
Coca-Cola. I cannot stand such stupid women that have no idea what Italian food is and Italian customs and all that.
Okay, I think Valentina.
So it sounds like
my
wife. Yeah, sounds like my wife. Yeah, sounds like my wife. Yeah.
So uninterrupted by Marjorie here. You have 60 seconds.
Uninterrupted by Marjorie.
You have an opportunity, Chris, to tell everybody why they should be coming to your deal.
So Sunday is going to be a perfect day to be on the fish pier. Come down and learn about why the Boston area and the New England area is the hub of the universe for seafood. When we talk about best in the world, this is the best in the world. You won't get it better. It sounds silly.
Can I tell you something? You got to add to your pitch. I don't really care about learning anything. I care about eating.
Come down. There's going to be a lot of food.
Every kind of seafood. Every kind of
Chowder,
lobster rolls, oysters, squid salad,
crab
calamari
cakes,
salad, crab cakes, octopus salad.
We have a
fish and chips.
Harpoon has the end of the pier overlooking Boston Harbor with a beer garden. Come down, have a beer, eat some oysters.
Now we're talking.
Listen to Hip Shot Band. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay, so before you gentlemen go, how do you cook a lobster?
Steam it for 12 minutes if it's a chick, firm shell.
Okay, that's how you do it.
Yep.
How about you?
So, again, I learned, being in the restaurant industry, I've worked with a lot of different chefs, and I had a Spanish chef one year. And I asked him to cook a lobster. And I was actually cooking a lobster. I boiled the water and getting ready to drop it in. He said, "Stop." He said, "Take that away, put a pot on, warm the water, put the lobster in. Before the water comes to a boil, the lobster will be done."
There you
and
go.
It doesn't shock the lobster. It's an absolutely Great way to do it.
Okay, warm the water and then heat it up. Okay.
By the way, I have to do a shout out. Speaking of lobsters, I've told you, Michael Packard. You know Michael Packard is the guy that ended up in the whale's mouth.
Yeah.
He and Josiah Mayo gave us 2 5-pound lobsters the other day on the piers of Provincetown.
Wow.
And I was under the impression,
5-pound lobster.
I'm going to make a case for you guys. I had heard my whole life that big lobsters are tough. They are not tough.
No.
They are
If you cook them
beautiful.
right, they're
If you cook
nice.
them right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
shout out to him. It's a pleasure to see you two guys. Thanks for
Thank
the food.
you both.
Good
Thank
luck
you
at
for
the
your time.
festival.
You are
We really
so
appreciate
generous.
it.
Thank you for all
Thank
this
you.
wonderful
What's the
food.
website again?
And have a wonderful time on Sunday.
What's the
Where is
site,
the
Chris?
website? I've got it right in front of me
Boston
here somewhere.
BostonSeafoodFestival.org.
Thank you.
That
gentlemen.
is right.
I hope to see a lot of people there
We hope
Sunday.
you do too.
I hope you do too. It's going to be a
Thank
very
you.
nice day on Sunday too. BostonSeafoodFestival.org. Okay, it's this Sunday, all day long on Boston's Fish Pier. As Paul said, best to do public transportation to avoid, the traffic and the parking. Tickets and info available. I'll give it again. BostonSeafoodsFestival.org. We've been speaking with Chris Basile, president of the Boston Fisheries Foundation, and Paul Vincent Hagen III of Denarius Trading Company, and we thank you both.
He's the husband of Valentina.
He's the husband of Valentina. He says he's the luckiest man in the world to sit next to her. I thought that was so sweet.
Thank
I
you.
thought that was
That's the truth.
wonderful.
Let's hope he's not lying. What
She's
if
holding down the fort. She's working while I'm here.
Is that really true?
100%. She's the CFO of the company.
Well, that is
That's right.
I'm over here drinking beer and talking to you guys. Yeah.
an honest man. Good to see you
Okay.
both, gentlemen.
Coming
Thank you
up to apologies to anybody who hasn't eaten lunch yet. We're going to talk some more food on the way, courtesy of our food policy analyst, Corby Kummer. We're talking about eating seaweed. Oh, we should have asked these guys about eating seaweed.
Well, it's too late. We'll ask Corby.
Okay, that's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us next Tuesday at the library in person, 11 to 12 for Ask the Mayor. We're joined now on Zoom by Corby Kummer. Corby is the executive director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, senior editor at the Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Hey there, Corby.
Hey, Jim. Hey, Marjorie.
Hey.
Great to talk to you again, Corby Kummer. Thank you so much. So let's start. I misplaced a piece of paper with the name of this tortilla chip.
I don't know how to pronounce it. P-A-Q-U-I. Pocky, I think, but I'm not sure.
A teenage boy from Massachusetts, 14 years old, ate one of these in this tortilla chip eating challenge, and he died. So what is going on with these tortilla chips, and why can you be selling something that could have those kind of consequences?
I think it's pronounced stupid and dangerous.
Exactly right.
This company based in Austin, Texas, had this, double, triple, quadruple dare of flavoring chip with two of the hottest peppers known to man. So you know the Scoville units. They're the unit of heat and capsaicin, the active ingredient in peppers. And if you think of a jalapeno as being 2,500 to 8,000 Scoville units, these two peppers they were using were 1.4 and 1.7 million Scoville units. In other words, nobody should be eating them unless, under very controlled, ridiculous, daredevil circumstances.
Pocky, by the way, is the name of it. P-A-Q-U-I.
Okay, go ahead.
The one chip challenge from Pocky.
And they marketed it in the shape of a coffin, and the back of it had "Face the Reaper" with a grim reaper, because one of the peppers is called the Carolina Reaper. Again, the idea is, do you dare do this? How long is it before you reach for water or start choking? And there was this one chip challenge that went viral. That can be fun for risk-taking adults. But despite the fact that there were 1 million disclaimers on the label saying, keep out of the reach of children and intended for adult consumption, who are the greatest daredevils and risk takers?
Teenagers.
Who think they're mortal?
Yeah.
It's kids.
Yeah.
So, of course it would attract kids and daredevils who would want to take this social media viral challenge. It should never have been allowed to be marketed. And the company, in all of its statements of regret, saying, we were completely legal within the law, then the law should change.
Well, speaking of law changing, I'll ask the same kind of naive question I asked Andy Anatko before, but why doesn't the government do something? I understand on the margin, and I understand how the industries obviously own the government agencies for the most part. I also understand that there's some nuance in some foods, some labeling. There's no nuance here at all. Is there no entity, no power within the government to just ban in advance any of these kinds of things that are this potentially fatal?
I guess it's on the generally recognized as safe list because hot edible peppers are. Death doesn't necessarily ensue.
Right.
It's obviously too risky for this to have been marketed in the first place, but I don't think there's a law now that would require a possibly dangerous, possibly stomach upsetting hot pepper to be marketed. But what's so infuriating about this and calls for the need for regulation is the company saying, we put it on the label, you should read the label. People don't read labels. That's what regulators are for.
By the way, I don't know if you just said this, but yesterday I mentioned that I went on Amazon.com. We were talking about it, and it was still up for sale. It's been they've withdrawn the product today, a little bit late for Harris Wallabaugh and his people who loved him down there in Worcester. We're talking to Corby Comer.
So, Corby, the New York Times had a great story about how many food allergies and diet restrictions college kids have today, which makes it very difficult for a lot of these college dining halls. We talked about this one young woman, Erica Kem, who's allergic to tree nuts and peanuts, seafood, coconut, dairy, eggs, wheat, barley, sesame, beef, mustard, and tomatoes. And she's an extreme example, perhaps, but they talk about how great percentages of children, huge numbers of kids, have allergies. It used to be 1 in 8 just 5 years ago. Now it's 1 in 6. So I guess one question is, what is going on with all these allergies? And number two, what are these colleges doing about their dining halls?
They're doing their best. And I recently started a college tour with a kind of a part of our adopted family, a 15-year-old who was already being taken on a college tour, and she's severely allergic to dairy, egg, peanuts, and beef. And so we did a sort of tour of the dining halls to see how good is the labeling. And I am sure we are not alone in doing these tours of dining halls. As for what causes the increase, there's lots of theories, and I won't review them now because I know you were going to ask me. However, there isn't a consensus about why. There's a new growing consensus about at what age you should introduce peanuts to infants.
Which is now like 4 or 5 months, right? Give them a little thing of peanut butter. Yeah.
Yep, just reading that last week. It's earlier and earlier. Nonetheless, there are students with violent allergies, and they want to socialize with other students.
Yeah.
They're all required to pay $5,000 to $6,000 a year in costs for the meals. They're required to buy into the meal plan so that can keep dining halls active. And dining halls are doing their very best. I guess there's a list of the 9 main allergens, and so some dining halls will have, here's the kitchen where none of these 9 is even allowed on the premises. That's what's so important, the whole idea of cross-contamination. One student who said that in her freshman year, there were so many spoons that had been put into something that contained gluten or one of her allergens, that she would still get ill from meals, even if there were, little plastic bins. Here's for you abnormal people who have to have these weird foods. They are making gestures toward this, but University of Connecticut, other local colleges are making tremendous efforts to serve this population, again, because they have to. This is where students socialize. This is their only source of food. And one vegan student, again, that's usually a preference, said she eats a lot of desserts only because those are the only options available to her by the time she gets to the dining hall. For students with severe allergies, this is a need, and colleges have to meet it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned voluntary choice around certain dietary things, because I obviously I'm sympathetic to people who have allergies. Obviously I am. But 13 years ago or 14 years ago, my older daughter was deciding to transfer for her sophomore year to a place in Western Mass, and she ended up at Smith, Marjorie's place. But one of the places she seriously considered was UMass Amherst. So we went and ate in the dining room. And I have to say, even then, it was one of the best meals I've ever had in any restaurant. And what they do there, and they were just voted by somebody, I don't know who it was, as the #1 haute cuisine, for lack of a better expression, in college dining services in the country. And the point of this story in the Globe is not only is the food unbelievable and the choice is unbelievable, but you can actually go eat there for a very affordable price, even if you don't have any connection to UMass Amherst. And while it's fabulous and we love the experience, isn't one of the reasons why colleges are so totally unaffordable is because of this perk? And believe me, if I was a college kid, I'd want this dining room for me too. But isn't this an incredibly cost-prohibitive exercise in an attempt to lure a kid to come to my school rather than your school?
I would say it's the inflated salaries that teachers like me get, and huge administrative costs, and the cost of running dormitories and keeping buildings alive and running. I would say that because colleges are competing on the quality of their dining hall and food, and UMass Amherst has this fabulous dining hall. The poll was the Princeton Review, which is the test prep people. They're private. They're not affiliated with Princeton University, but still they sort of have their finger on the pulse. It's an enormous selling point, but I doubt that in the grand scheme of university expenses, it's that big a waste. Kids want to eat well, they have to eat well, and they are required to eat at colleges. So I don't see this as a big money waster. And in fact, colleges, to attract the ideology of students, will buy from many, many local suppliers, as UMass Amherst does.
That's a good
point.
point.
It's hundreds of local suppliers. I remember when Brandeis was having a student group and various local chapters of slow food in colleges were advocating for this. It's become a given. The colleges have to demonstrate commitment to local purveyors. Yes, it costs more, but quality ingredients do cost more, and I'm in favor of telling university students from now on, you should pay higher price for well-raised food.
By the way, this story, I should have mentioned, the person who wrote this is Brooke Hauser, who writes in part, this is about UMass Amherst coming in first in this Princeton Review thing. She really centers the story on her 11-year-old kid, Marlo,
that's right.
who said the first time he ate at this one dining hall at UMass Amherst was, quote, the best day of his whole life. I can relate to this kid. This one dining room, this one dining room serves 12,000 meals every single day. One of many dining rooms at UMass Amherst. It's unbelievable the scale on which these people operate and have incredibly high quality at the same time, you know?
So, Corby Kummer, apparently seaweed is now appearing in all sorts of foods, according to Mother Jones: pasta, chips, burgers, butter, bread, beer, salsa, tea, muffins, and even ice cream.
I bet you don't like it that either, do you?
Well, I don't think I've ever tried it.
I mean, as a straight piece?
Yeah, but the question Mother Jones is asking is, can seaweed eating help the climate crisis? Can it?
Sure it can. The idea is that it's carbon sequestration, and it helps absorb a lot of harmful greenhouse gas emissions in the ocean. What I found from this piece in Mother Jones was that despite the enormous increase in the number of seafood farms, and I think you've had the wonderfully charismatic Bryn Smith maybe on this show.
Oh, we did.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
I mean, what a fantastic salesperson and evangelist for seaweed farming and how great it is for the environment, and I'm all for it. But it turns out, I think one of the points in this piece was that if the seaweed farms are right near the surface and they use a lot of plastic, which they do, and the plastic can break off into micro shards that go into the ocean, generally it has to be way down below at the sea's bottom to effectively keep carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere for a long time. So maybe eating seaweed isn't going to be quite as good for the environment as we think it's going to be, but it's incredibly full of protein and minerals and vitamins, and it's much less expensive to farm than other forms of protein, especially if you start comparing them to animal agriculture. So it's great to have seaweed farming, but maybe there's a bit of greenwashing in the carbon sequestration, and probably I'm going to get lots of calls saying, no, it's still a great thing, as I'm sure it is.
Well, one thing they don't mention in the Mother Jones story, at least if I recall, is while they talk about the climate aspect, they don't talk about the adequate food on the planet prospect. I mean, they're unlimited. There are a lot of hungry people in the world, as we discuss with you pretty regularly, and there's a lot of seaweed in the world. And when you read in the story, the writer is suggesting that many in the obviously they're in the industry, so they would say this, are likening what they think is going to happen in the oceans with the agricultural revolution of whenever it was. And it seems pretty obvious to me, as our land gets fuller and as more people on the planet, 10 billion in a few years, and people get hungrier as a whole, that this is the direction, literally, the physical direction we're going to go, no?
It's a great direction. I think that what matters is the economic viability of harvesting seaweed, which grows abundantly and wild on a large enough scale to start putting it into products and feed lots of people. And therefore, apparently in the last 20 years, harvesting of wild seaweed has stayed at the levels it's been. I'm sure that's because of economic viability, whereas it's much easier to concentrate it in a farm. And in Asia, where there's a much higher market for seaweed, it's tripled to 38 million tons a year. The farming industry has tripled. And if Bryn Smith has his way, that will be the same in North America.
So we're going to play a little sound from the late, great Anthony Bourdain. That was one of the big thrills of my life when we got to talk to him here at the Boston Public Library, Jim. But he's talking about a restaurant, Casa Salvador in Spain, from a 2010 episode of his show, No Reservations. Here he is.
Casa Salvador is just the kind of place I love. Frozen in time, confused a bit by what's going on outside its walls, but inside, confident of what it does well and has always done well. I've been a lot of places. This is one of those restaurants. I already know I'm going to eat really, really well.
So this is a story from the Globe by Guillermo Fezer about what Anthony Bourdain's visit to Casa Salvador meant to the restaurant.
It's a beautiful story, actually.
It meant that the older guy who had 4 uninterested children who was going to close his restaurant didn't have to, because Guillermo Fezer would help revive an entire downtown market in Madrid as part of Madrid's overall incredibly vibrant revival, which is why Bourdain looked him up and insisted that he come tour him around, because he'd been part of this group that had salvaged this beautiful market based on Les Halles, the incredible produce market in Paris, and was similarly endangered. Les Halles died and moved out to Rongy outside of Paris. But there was a movement to help and rescue this market. But when Bourdain, who liked this guy, this writer who now lives in Hudson River Valley, said at the end of their shooting in the market, so where would you go to eat? He said, I have the place for you. The chef is a friend of mine. It's really traditional. It's fantastic. So they went that night with the writer's wife and 2 kids and fell in love with it. Anthony Bourdain fell in love with it. Featured it 2 months later, which I find an amazingly quick turnaround.
It is.
I produce a TV episode, and the line for reservations was around the block. The way Bourdain had said on air, if this were in New York City, there'd be a 2-mile line to get in because it's doing so well. And so the owner called up a grateful Guillermo Fesser and said, we're not closing. And eventually one of his daughters took over, and the owner died a few years afterward. But the restaurant continues proudly on because Bourdain had such reach, such power, and he had such good taste to fall in love with a purveyor of traditional, wonderful Spanish foods.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story that people should check out. It's called Anthony Bourdain of No Reservations Saved a 70-Year-Old Madrid Eatery, and it's from the Boston Globe magazine. You can look it up online.
Corby, pleasure, as always. So great to see you.
Thank you, Corby. Good to talk to you. Hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a Senior Editor at The Atlantic, and a Senior Lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. Okay, we had a tragedy yesterday, Jim, when we couldn't do our Thursday regular segment now, which is Am I the A-hole? Or Who is the A-hole? So we're doing it today. And we're going to ask you, open the lines at 877-301-8970 to call or text us. Am I the a-hole for saying no thanks to an office birthday party? We're going to give you all the details up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, Boston Public Radio, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us for Ask the Mayor, 11 to 12, right here on Tuesday. You know, yesterday, as Marjorie said, we got a little sidetracked. We had Lavender Darkangelo and her two dads, Eddie Izzard after. So we missed our weekly and becoming our favorite, unfortunately, segment called Am I the A-hole?
Because we can relate to it, Jim.
We can, actually. And a lot of you texted to complain, and your patience is about to be rewarded. Let me give you a little background. This is inspired by a community on Reddit of the same name, meaning Am I the A-hole? Here's how it works. Real people write in with their real-life ethical dilemmas, allowing anonymous readers on the internet to weigh in on whether the poster is or is not the a-hole in a given scenario. So what we do is even simpler. We steal the best posts from the site, discuss them on air with you. This week's entry comes from a user whose name is LastCrab621. It's titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing to participate in the birthday lunch at work? So listen carefully and then call or text in quickly at 877-301-8970. Last Crab works in a small office, about 9 people. Every time an employee has a birthday, everybody in the office goes out to a lunch for the birthday haver's choice, meaning the restaurant that he or she or they choose is where they go. The only problem is the poster, Last Crab, shares his birthday with a colleague who, quote, has the taste buds of a petulant toddler and acts like one when we go out. So he doesn't want to go. Here's the question. Does wanting to step back from the office festivities because you can't go to the lunch place of your choosing make Last Crab the a-hole? Or are the a-holes the people in the office insisting on mandated fun regardless of how this worker feels about the whole thing in the restaurant in question? The number is 301-8970. You can call or text. Who is the a-hole? Marjorie, why don't you answer the first question?
Well, we should add here that Last Crab really can't stand this coworker that she shares the birthday with.
Yeah.
She said every year.
Oh, it's a woman. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was a woman.
Every year, everyone else gets to choose their favorite restaurants. Well, each year, I have to settle for some mediocre bull blank.
Yeah.
Because he has, this is Francis, the guy with the birthday date, same as hers. Francis has the taste buds of a petulant toddler, acts like one when we go out, embarrassing to be with him. He has an attitude to his service. We all place bets to see how fast he sends back his food or complains and tries to get his meal comped. So,
you're just complicating this thing.
I just
you are complicating
this the full story.
Okay, so which side are you on? Who's the a-hole?
Why don't you start?
What?
Why don't you start?
First of all, I don't want to go anywhere with anybody. So that's the threshold notion. I want to admit that to begin with. Secondly, if I'm forced on my birthday to go to a restaurant that I don't want to go to, I shouldn't have to go, period. And by the way, the guy who didn't want to go to the restaurant, the birthday boy or girl or whoever it was willing to chip in for this other jerk's birthday lunch. He just, or she just didn't want to go. So the answer is clearly not the person who is politely opting out, but rather the coworkers, the office, who are, as I said, mandating fun for somebody who doesn't find the whole episode to be fun. How about you?
And also Last Crab really shouldn't have to share the birthday lunch with this person she can't stand.
Exactly.
So maybe what they should do is give one lunch to the jerk that nobody can't stand.
And then do another one.
Another one for
Which they would do if their
Crab.
birthdays were one day apart, by the way.
That's
They
right.
would have done that
so
there.
are we going to blame the office workers here? Say that
I'm blaming the office workers. So I'm asking what your position is.
Well, I think the office workers are not very fair to poor Last Crab. And also, I don't want to go out to lunch with anybody either who's yelling at the servers and sending their food back and complains the moment the food comes to the table.
the other birthday person?
Yeah, the other birthday person.
Okay, the number's 877-301-8970. The question is quite simple. Who is the a-hole in this situation? You ever been, by the way...
Okay, here's the text. Any mandatory fun gatherings are full of holes.
By the way, that is a wonderful point to begin with, yeah.
Yeah, and I think they mean a hole there is what they're talking about. And somebody else says, who pays for lunch?
That was really crossing the line, my friend.
It was?
I think so.
I think we're allowed to say that, aren't we?
Well, not in that context.
We're not?
Well, maybe we are.
It's too late now.
Well, it is too late.
Who pays for lunch? Getting a free meal and a long lunch is good. Paying for a crappy meal and having to spend time with idiots is bad. That's Paul from Worcester.
Well, I'm with Paul from Worcester,
and
too.
Here's one more. Birthday parties are for children. All adults involved here win the A-hole award.
Wow. And by the way, in a second, we know what text will be. The real a-hole is Jim, even though I have nothing to do with this one.
We get that every week.
877
I'll let you know when we get those.
301-8970. Do you like it? I assume, knowing you as I do, and you're a big coworker kind of person your whole career.
Not really.
Oh, yes, you are.
Okay.
You're too modest and you're being not
right,
nice
okay.
enough to yourself.
Well,
Were you taking did you ever work in a place? We worked at the Herald forever. Did you ever work in a place where people got taken out for their birthday?
No.
You didn't?
No. Did you?
Yes.
No, who's going to cover the news if we're all out celebrating somebody's birthday, Jim?
Well, it's just a lunch
we
kind of thing.
We were at our desk covering the news kind of thing.
So you never did that?
No. The times you went to lunch, somebody always called you from the office. You had to go to some fire or some disaster somewhere. It was never worthwhile. You had to wait till after the paper was put to bed, as we say.
And you drank yourselves into submission.
Actually, we went to J.J. Foley's in the South End and drank ourselves into submission.
877-301-8970. Who is the a-hole in this situation?
I started working from home 10 years ago. Getting out of office birthday parties is my number one perk from being at home. Erica from Warwick, Rhode Island. That's what she thinks is
Well,
so
you know what
great
the other
about
thing
working
is,
from
by
home.
the way, is that this really relates to the whole topic, which is not the am I the a-hole question, so we'll get back to that in about 30 seconds, about the whole concept of office partying with your coworkers kind of thing. And part of the problem here, which is sort of a minor point, but not an insignificant one, I guess. I know that's oxymoronic. I take it back. There are only 9 people. One of the beauties is if you go to an office gathering that you really don't want to go to, what's that one exit? I don't know if you're allowed to say this in the air. What happens when you get out of something really, you leave quickly, which I am a master of?
Irish goodbye?
Oh, well, you said it since you're Irish. An Irish goodbye. You can't do an Irish goodbye
sneak out.
with 9 other people. You just
out.
can't do it.
Yeah, and sometimes office parties are really, they don't turn out to be very joyous a lot of the time either.
Yeah.
877-301-8970. Aaron from Hopkinton.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
You are first on the Who's the A-Hole segment this week.
Hey, Aaron.
Well, I'm just calling to say, yep, hey guys, I was surprised by Jim's take because I hear him constantly saying everybody needs to get back to the office for all the office friendships and all the good times back there with your coworkers. And the second there's a party, he's saying, it's not my cup of tea, you guys are jerks. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting take on things.
Can you give me a couple of days to think about that and get back to Aaron? Is that okay?
That's a very good point.
Aaron, that is a fine point.
Yeah,
thank you. That is a fine point. Thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
We have a lot of texters who don't want to have anything to do with their coworkers, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well,
by the way, I love working with my coworkers. I love working with my coworkers, but socializing with your coworkers, particularly in this instance, when you can't even socialize, you're the center of attention. It's your birthday, and you can't even pick the place where you go. Doesn't that put the damper on the whole festivity?
That's a very good point.
Thank you. What are they saying?
That's a very good point. We're getting them now, of course. The Jim is my favorite a-hole. We're getting swamped with those, as we always do. Last Crab has my vote. It says a texter, I will never work in an office again because of these gossipy situations that I have been forced to endure. I think a lot of people don't really like going to office parties, especially with the ones where there's drinking involved and things get out of order.
It's a lunch.
People get in a lot of trouble. Well, they could have drinks at lunch. People get in a lot of trouble at liquid-fueled office parties.
How about J.J. Foley's? What was that like for you and your coworkers?
A lot of people got a lot of trouble at J.J.
Like what?
Foley's.
Give me an
Well,
example.
there's a lot of cavorting and a lot of
Tell people,
apologizing
before we
the
get
next
to the
day.
next call, tell people the story you told me about the roof of the Herald.
Oh, this is one of the great stories of all time.
I can't believe she's going to tell it. I assumed she was going to say, I'm not telling this.
Oh, I'm not going to tell it?
Go right ahead.
It happened a long time ago.
Go ahead.
This couple was having an affair.
Uh-huh.
And the Boston Herald used to be located at the intersection of the Mass Pike and 93.
Oh, no.
You know, right there where there's a lot of traffic every single solitary day. And the couple would go up to the roof.
Why? Why would they
the
go up
Herald.
there?
Well, they were having an affair, and they were doing what you do when you have an affair, and you're trying to sneak around on the roof.
Yeah.
And it came to the attention of the owner of the Herald at that particular moment, and so they put up a fence, like a chain link fence, and no one could go up to the roof anymore of the Boston
really
Herald.
sad.
Can you imagine that? Yeah, that was a great
People stopped
story.
driving down 93 after
Well, it was
that.
causing
Why
a lot
bother?
causing a lot of excitement. There were a lot of car accidents at the intersection of the Mass Pike. And
Who are the people, by the way?
I think we're not going to go there, Jim.
Okay, Brenda in the car, you're next on Who is the A-hole here on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
How are you today?
How are you?
Okay, I frequently listen to these people on TikTok and everything else doing Am I the A-hole? In this particular case, I don't think she's being an A-hole at all. If she can't stand the coworker and she's not going to have a good time going out for her birthday, I don't think she's an A-hole at all. I would do the same thing. If I can't stand the person, then I'm not going to go and pretend to be happy to be there.
Wait, it's worse than that. Not only can she not stand the person, she can't stand the restaurant. She wants to pick her own damn restaurant
Yeah, he always
to
picks
be treated
a bad one.
treated to. So, Brenda, that was an excellent.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it's even worse. Brenda, thank you for an excellent call and a wonderful perspective on this issue.
Yeah,
Thank
Aaron
you.
and Lakefield, a lot of other people are saying everybody else in the office is an a-hole because if two people have the same birthday, the company should take everyone to the restaurant of choice of the one of them. And if they have the same birthday, once you get to choose the day that they're going out, make it their birthday a different day so they can go out.
Exactly.
Exactly. And a lot of people are saying, why don't they just buy her cake and be done with it?
Yeah,
You know what I
that's a
mean?
good point.
Everybody likes cake.
Well, you didn't read did you read the second paragraph
I
of
didn't
this
read the
thing?
second paragraph.
After the thing, all 9 of them go up to the roof of the Herald. Did you know that? So there is an extra attraction.
Yeah.
How often does that happen?
I don't know.
Well,
I
yes,
don't know.
you do, actually.
I was busy.
Yes, you do.
I was busy at work, Jim.
Okay. Was this like you don't have to give me numbers. It was a regular occurrence?
I guess it was enough that the people
put
that
up
ran
a
the
fence.
place got upset and they brought in a chain link fence so nobody else could go up on the roof of the Herald.
Yeah.
Yeah. You did know. Well, I'm not going to go into this anymore.
Well, why don't you?
No, I'm not. I'm going to
Okay.
get.
877-301-89. Marjorie got us a little off track because she was talking about the Herald situation with the roof thing there. That's, by the way, if I may say, the best Whole Foods in the world. I've been
It's
to
next
many
to
Whole
the Herald.
Foods. Is now where the Herald
Yeah,
used
and
to
you know
be.
what they have in there?
What's
They
it called?
have all-
Ink Spot or Ink Blot or whatever the hell
Yeah,
it is.
the ink block
Ink block,
in honor
thank you.
in honor of the Herald,
Ink
and they
block,
have
yeah.
some
of
front
course.
pages in there.
I know, it's great.
It's really kind of cool in there. And the big joke is that they have this beautiful, body lotion and body creams and all these wonderful things in the spot where all the pressmen used
I
to be
didn't
the
know
bathroom.
that.
It used to be the shower area for the pressmen. And you're running the presses for a lot of hours, you are kind of greasy and kind of sweaty, and everyone from the Herald got a big joke out of how
that's pretty great.
Yeah,
is that true, or is that?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. People that haven't been in newspapers and seen it, it's a wonderful thing to see the presses run at night. We used to get, at the Herald, we got the Globe's old presses, so our presses were routinely catching on fire, and you could sometimes, which is not a good thing, you don't want the press to catch on fire, but to see them run at night and the papers come boom, 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 boom. You see it on TV sometimes. It's a really neat
Do you
thing.
remember
and
when the Globe was still at Morrissey Boulevard?
You could see them from Morrissey Boulevard. Yeah, they had big yellow ones. And the room is about, what, I don't know, 60 feet high or something like that?
Pretty great.
To get the presses in. Okay.
So back to this. Who is the a-hole? What's that?
Woody, the UPS driver, says, I thought Jim loved free food.
No, I do like free food, but you don't want, nobody wants it. You know what the bottom line, no one wants to be in a forced situation. Would you agree with that? I mean, that's
Nobody
really
wants to
the
be in a
issue.
forced
And if
situation.
is this a woman you keep saying she?
I think she's a woman,
Crab
yes.
Cake is a woman. Last Crab is a woman. If Last Crab doesn't want to be at the damn thing, then she shouldn't have to be at the thing. And the fact that she is being abused, at least spiritually, if that's, I don't know if that's the best word, by her coworkers because she doesn't want to participate, sort of doubles the sin as far as I'm concerned.
People are asking me if it was Howie Carr on the roof of the Herald. It was not. It was not Howie Carr on the roof of the Herald. It was not Howie Carr on the roof of the Herald.
Can I make a
Absolutely not.
suggestion?
Yep.
I know one of the things that I don't criticize you much. One of the criticisms of you is when you tell a story, you can't leave people hanging. So how about this for a compromise? Spell their names backwards. No, really, or just one of their names. But do I know these people?
Well, you know one of them.
I do? The man and the woman?
I'm not going to tell you
Was it a
anymore,
man and a
Jim.
woman?
I'm not going to tell you anymore.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you anymore. Nobody seems to think...
The question is, who is the a-hole? The two of them for doing it, or Marjorie for not telling us who the two are
Yeah,
who
well, I
did
told
do
you
it?
part of it. It's a pretty good story, is it not?
It's a pretty good
I mean, how
story.
many people could talk about that? Right at the intersection of 93 and the Mass
beautiful.
Pike. I mean, right up there. Think about it. Rush hour traffic. People are going like 5 miles an hour. And, you know, they were entertained for months, you know,
Exactly.
going 5 miles an hour. Look at that over there, right under the big Boston Herald sign. Am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? I don't know.
Was there a Herald sign on the roof of the building?
Yeah, there was a sign on the roof. Yeah, the poor Herald. It's not what it used to be. But anyway, I would like to say from reading the emails that
Text.
no one, the text, excuse me, that no one is blaming Crabby, whatever her
Last
name
Crab.
is. Last Crab. Yeah, they all think that she's got a raw deal here, and she should not be forced to go out with a coworker she doesn't like at a time she doesn't like, to be with this guy that she thinks is a real jerk. Here's the thing we should really be saying.
What's that?
How awful is it to go out for lunch or dinner with someone who has an attitude with the wait staff and who sends his food back and complains about the food basically before it even gets there and wants to go see the manager?
You know
or
who that
wants to see the
person
chef?
is?
That's your father, Jim.
My father.
That explains a lot of Jim's problems.
My
is that his father
I'm
was
sorry
terrible.
to get off topic, but since we are, my father, for about 3-4 years of his career, made a ton of money. The rest of his life, he made a modest amount of money. And when he made a lot of money, we used to go to restaurants in New York, quite a decent amount. There was never a time, I can't believe we're getting into this, there was almost never a time where he, you know when you order a bottle of wine and they pour it and you taste it, how many times have you ever been with somebody who sent the bottle of wine back?
Never.
Okay, how many times did my father not send the wine? Never, never. Just to show what a big shot he was in almost every situation. You know how uncomfortable it is to go out, this is sort of analogous, I know that's why you made the point, that this guy having to go out with this a-hole coworker, it's really a horrible experience. Yet another reason why Last Crab is in the right in this situation.
I think Last Crab is winning by about 10-1. There's nobody that seems to think, or almost nobody seems to think that this person is wrong not to go out. So I think we decided.
We have?
Yes, I think we have. She is not the a-hole. It's her fellow workers that insist she has to go out with 9 people she doesn't like.
Why do you think we find this segment, this thing we borrowed from Reddit, thanks to Nicole, our coworker, why are we so attracted to this? We look forward to this almost as much as we look forward to any segment we do every week. What is the allure for you and me?
Because I think a lot of people think that they have to put up with a lot of not very nice people in their lives. Isn't that right?
A-holes, I believe, is what they're called
I think
there.
that's the reason why. Okay, we're going to play something, aren't we?
We are going to play something.
Yes.
Only because we want to continue to promote this in a wonderful way, because we had as good a time as we could possibly ever have yesterday. Lavender Dark Angelo is a finalist in America's Got Talent. The final of 2 people, and if she is the winner, wins $1 million, and she intends to do wonderful things with that million, including construct a school where people and kids can pursue what they're curious and interested in, as how she put it. She is a blind 28-year-old woman who also has autism. She asked a man who was her voice coach about 10 years ago if he would adopt her. And that man, Will Darkangelo, and Will's husband, Jamie, decided to adopt her. And yesterday they were in our studio. We talked, and the conversation was beautiful. And you can find the whole thing, all 30 minutes, at gbhnews.org.
Yeah, we filmed it. Howard
it's on the
filmed
homepage. Howard Pell, our colleague, filmed it. But the thing I wanted to play again, because it was so beautiful, we knew she was going to sing. She had agreed in advance. And she sang Bridge Over Troubled Waters, I think, as well, if not better, than Simon and Garfunkel. They had not sung this other song together, Over the Rainbow, in 4 years, yet I asked them if they would. They leaned over to each other, they whispered in each other's ears, I guess how they were going to do it, whatever. And here's just 30 seconds of this beautiful duet with 2 members of this beautiful family, and you can find the whole thing again on gbhnews.org on the homepage. Here they are.
Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true.
Will and
Pretty
Lavender
good.
Darkangelo. She's
Yeah.
on the finals September 26th.
And
Next week, we're going to tell you how to vote.
All about how to vote.
Yep.
Okay. We are done. Thank
We're
you very
done.
much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. We have a podcast. You can listen to the 3-hour version or the short version, which is a half hour, but they're both really good. If you want to hear more or miss something, tune in Monday for legendary environmentalist Bill McKibben. He's going to talk to us about this hottest summer on record. We've just been through what it means for us going forward. The Ground Truth Project's Charlie Sennett. We haven't talked to him in a while.
Yep.
Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young, the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price III, and American experienced filmmakers, 2 of them. I saw at the beginning of this last night the premiere of their PBS film, The Busing Battleground, the decades-long road to school desegregation. It's about the busing tragedy, I would say, in Boston. It's really well done. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. We want to thank our engineer, John the Claw Parker. Bill Piacitelli is on the board today for John, who has a day off. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Thanks to the special team down here at the Boston Public Library, Colin Cockrell, Evelyn Brito, and Brad Lewis.
Want to thank people for coming?
I do. I want to thank people
Thank you all for coming.
down
We really
to the Boston
appreciate
Public
it.
Library. Really appreciate that as well. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Brody. See you
I hope-
Monday.
I hope you have a great weekend, and as Jim just said, I hope you can tune in on Monday. Bye.